I will be purchasing the crayfish for 50 copper coins each for the long term. You can deliver the crayfish to my restaurant directly whenever you catch them. I will purchase them collectively at 8 am and 4:30 pm. I won't accept if you deliver them at other timings. The restaurant's address. Mag told the fisherman the restaurant's address. As he factored in the time and effort needed to go to the port to purchase the crayfish, he decided to let the fisherman deliver the goods directly to him at the restaurant. Regarding that, the fishermen didn't have any objections. They only wanted to return to the beach to look for more crayfish after collecting their money. The price of 50 copper coins each was enough to make the fisherman crazy. Mag found a strapping demon to help him carry the 300 crayfish back by paying him 20 copper coins. Are we going to start selling crayfish by noon? Irina asked Mag as she watched him pour the crayfish into the big pond at the corner of the yard. Yes. I estimate there would be an endless supply of crayfish coming to us. The pond wouldn't be able to accommodate them if I don't start selling them. Mag nodded. The 300 crayfish took out almost half of the pond after all, they were about 1 kilogram each. Are you able to manage on your own? Irina asked doubtfully. After all, they had so many service staff members at Mamie restaurant. This is indeed a problem. Mag was taken aback, and he looked at Irina. I've never served people. I'm afraid I will act up as soon as they speak, Irina said calmly. But if you think I could, I don't mind giving it a try. Let's forget it. You just be the lady boss who collects the money. Mag quickly rejected her. Given Irina's temperament, if she acted up, it would be a bloodbath, and the restaurant would be out of business. Hey, what's that? Amy, who was running around in the yard with Ugly Duckling, suddenly pointed at a fake mountain decoration in a corner of the yard. Mag and Irina looked over that simultaneously. An edge of a dress appeared behind the rock and quickly went back. Come out, Irina ordered coldly. After a moment of silence, a thin and weak figure stood up in the midst of the fake mountains. She was wearing a long black shirt with an uneven black cloth wrapped around her face. Her clothes were dyed brownish red by blood, and she was grasping a razor-sharp stone with her muddy hands. Her entire body was trembling. She is. Mag found that unicorn demon maiden a little familiar. What are you doing here? Irina asked that unicorn demon coldly with a hint of surprise in her gaze too. Wasn't that the demon maiden that she'd rescued in the morning? Jane looked at Irina, and the fear in her eyes was replaced by astonishment. What a beautiful demoness! She had never seen such a beautiful demon. Even the most beautiful succubus big sister wasn't even 10% as beautiful as this big sister. But she soon regained her wits to realize her current situation. She could be killed immediately for home invasion on Carapace Island. The Ten Kings Palace wouldn't care about someone like her who wasn't from a powerful tribe and was without an identity. After that incident in the morning, she had been running around in a panic. She encountered the Ten Kings Palace's patrol team when she was in this area, and she ran into this courtyard to hide in her trepidation. She had intended to leave after the patrol team was gone, but she didn't expect the owners would return and discover her. Jane lowered her head and said, I am Jane, a unicorn demon. I've entered your courtyard accidentally and offended you. I promise I meant no harm, please forgive my transgression. She was still grasping the stone tightly. She at least had to resist if someone tried to kill her. You have killed a demon? Irina asked her coldly. I didn't. Jane's face paled instantly. Facing Irina's cold gaze, she shook her head, and said in a choked-up voice, I didn't kill them. They were trying to violate me. I don't know who killed them. I didn't see his looks, but I'm very grateful to him. He saved me. It's her. Mag only remembered her at that moment. This demon maiden was the one that Irina had saved that morning. However, he only had taken a brief glance in the morning, and hadn't taken a closer look. He hadn't expected to see her at home again. Do you need to be so afraid over the killing of some demon scu.m? So what if you had killed them? A faint smile appeared on Irina's face, and she began to look at Jane with interest in her eyes. This girl was rather interesting. Although she was pathetically weak, she wasn't an ungrateful demon. But they all had protective amulets on them. If the Ten Kings Palace found out about me, they're not going to let me off, even when I'm not the murderer, Jane said fearfully. To her, the Ten Kings Palace was the scariest and most powerful force in this world. They're SCU.M protected by SCU.M. So what if they're killed? Irina shook her head, and said to Jane, "Take the cloth off your face and let me have a look." Jane wasn't used to Irina's words. The Ten Kings Palace was the absolute ruler on Carapace Island, but this beautiful big sister was afraid of them at all. However, looking at Irina, she had an unexplainable sense of trust in her. She removed the tattered cloth on her face after some hesitation. There was blood and minor cuts on her face, but they could still see her pretty features. Her shoulder-length silver hair was matted by blood too. There was a light golden horn about 5 centimeters long with pinkish gold swirls, which looked very exquisite, at the center of her forehead. "How old are you?" Irina asked. 13. Is there anyone else in your family? My mother died 10 days ago. I have no family left. Are you a fast worker? I'm very fast when I'm picking the seashells. I'm faster than everyone. Irina nodded with satisfaction before saying, "Very good. Then you will stay here. You're the employee of our restaurant from today onwards. You will be provided with food, lodging, and salary." Hey! Both Jane and Mag were taken aback. Stay? I can stay here, and I will be provided with food and salary. Jane looked at Irina and felt as if she had heard things wrong. This beautiful big sister didn't pursue her crime of trespassing, and she was going to take her in instead? And the recruitment is completed just like this. Mag was secretly stunned too. As the boss, he didn't even get the chance to speak. He had lost a great deal of his power of speech. This is fantastic. I've gained another big sister, Amy said happily. Jane stared at Irina, and she had no idea how to describe her current feelings. Our restaurant has just started for business, and we're short of one service staff member. If you're willing to join our service staff, we can provide 3 meals, lodging, and an appropriate salary, Mag said to Jane. Just like Irina said, he, too, was too lazy to go and recruit staff. It was naturally the best if this demon maiden was suitable. Jane looked at Mag. Although this demon looked a little weird, his eyes were clean and clear, and made people trust him. Furthermore, that little demon with a pair of pincers on her head was so adorable. She couldn't suspect such a family of 3. After a brief hesitation, she nodded. If you're willing to let me stay, Jane will be very glad to. But, I could bring you trouble if I stay on, Jane quickly added. She didn't want to cause any disaster to anyone just like her mother. If it weren't because she wanted to protect her. Trouble? It doesn't exist. Irina waved her relaxedly. She told Jane, who was still standing in the fake mountains, "Come out first." Jane quickly came out of the fake mountains. Pain flashed across her face when her bloodied feet touched the ground laid with seashells, but she didn't make a sound or a strained expression. Irina glanced at Jane's feet before walking up to her and grabbing her wrist gently. A green beam entered Jane's body through her wrist. She only felt a cool sensation sweeping across her body, and all the wounds on her body began to heal right in front of her eyes. "Let's go. I'll bring you for a bath and change your clothes." Irina released Jane's wrist and walked toward the restaurant. Jane regained her wits, and discovered that the wounds on her body had all recovered. The sensation of pain was all gone too. That wound on her hand only had a light pink mark left, as if it was never wounded before. Thank you." Jane was amazed at Irina's formidable healing magic and swiftly thanked her. She quickly caught up with Irina's pace, but she halted her footsteps at the restaurant's entrance. Looking at the clean restaurant and her muddy and bloodied feet, she hesitated to step in. Let's wear a pair of slippers. Your feet will feel more comfortable. Mag placed a pair of slippers in front of Jane. Mopping was a tedious chore, and making her step in directly was going to stress her out. Thank you. Jane bowed at Mag deeply, and then placed her feet gingerly into that pair of pretty pink slippers. The soft texture was so comfortable that it surprised her. She had never worn shoes that were so comfortable. She used to wear grass shoes that her mother weaved with seaweeds, and her feet were always cut by stones. Jane only stepped into the restaurant carefully after wearing a pair of clean shoes. The bright and clean restaurant had neatly arranged tables and chairs. All these amazed her because she had never seen a restaurant like this on Carapace Island. The bathroom is upstairs, Irina said at the staircase before going upstairs. Jane swiftly retrieved her gaze and followed Irina up. Mag kept the two nets that held the crayfish, and said in his brain, "System, let's choose a female outfit." "Host, have you decided to put on a female outfit?" There was a hint of excitement in the system's voice. "I'm choosing a working uniform for the new staff member." Mag rolled his eyes. "Oh, I see. They are all showing off their hosts' pictures of wearing female outfits in our circles recently." The system said disappointedly. "What the hell?" Mag C.O.C.Ked an eyebrow. He could sense that things weren't that simple. If the host is willing to put on a female outfit, this system could provide all the female outfits that you can select and give you a makeup experience bag as a gift. The system was still trying to convince him. "Get lost." Mag rejected coldly. That was so gay. Was he that kind of person? Mag chose a red and white short-sleeved maid costume with a long skirt for Jane. It was always summer at the boundless sea realm, and Carapace Island was a typical tropical island with a daily 30+ degrees Celsius temperature. Choosing the maid's costume was because the maid's costume was relatively conservative. It was the best to maintain a low profile while doing business on Carapace Island. Being a little conservative could save them a lot of trouble. The female outfits that the system likes: 1 maid costume, 2 school swimsuit. All right, you can shut up now. Mag clicked open the list that system displayed. He went in to retrieve the maid costume and black leather shoes that the system delivered to the door. He then went upstairs to pass them to Irina, who had just taught Jane how to use the shower and the different kinds of toiletries. "When did you prepare the clothes? Whom are these meant for? They're not my size." Irina asked as she unfurled the maid's costume, staring at Mag. Mag sensed an unusual hostility. He had slipped up as he had forgotten about problems like this. After the sparks flashed through his mind, he casually said, "This is the uniform I prepared for Mia previously. But it was too small, so I just kept it. I wonder if Jane could fit into it." "Oh, I see." Irina nodded as she believed Mag's words. Phew. Mag turned around and heaved a breath of relief as he gave his own wits a thumbs up. Jane came down about 30 minutes later, and walked to Mag and Irina, who were drinking tea. She greeted them softly while staring at her black leather shoes. "Boss, lady boss. It fits nicely." Irina appraised the maid costume on Jane. "It fits so nice as if it was custom made." "Don't be so nervous. You're the restaurant's employee, and our relationship is an employer and employee relationship, not a master and servant relationship." Mag smiled. Jane looked totally different after a bath and a change of clothes. Her palm-sized face had intricate and distinct features. Although her skin was rather tan, and she had freckles due to long-term sun exposure, she had a youthful aura with her damp grayish-white hair loose around her shoulders. "Whoa, big sister Jane is so pretty," Amy said with a smile as she walked around Jane. Jane lifted her head up to give Irina and Mag a shy smile. "All right, we will start operating officially at noon. Let me tell you about your work scope." Mag got up and walked to the kitchen. He soon came back with a big stack of plates and 3 live and energetic crayfish. "First of all, the server needs to place the order for the customers, which is asking what crayfish's flavor they want and the number of crayfish. Mag began to teach Jane how to be a qualified server quickly. Ordering, serving, billing, clearing. Jane had to do all these jobs by herself. Jane, who was very confident at first, began to get nervous. I will handle the bills. I think it should be very interesting, Irina interrupted with an expectant smile. If someone refused to pay, then we'll beat them all to death. Amy continued for her. She placed her little fist next to her face, and fiercely said, "We're very fierce." "Yes, we're very fierce." Irina nodded as she patted Amy's head with a smile. "That's fine too." Mag nodded. Mag also hated those people who tried to dine and dash very much. This was a serious display of disrespect to his labor. Letting Irina handle them with violence seemed like a good choice, and it could reduce Jane's workload. Otherwise, this girl was going to break down. "Jane, your job will be ordering, serving and clearing. There will be quite a lot of customers, so the work could be rather intense. Are you sure you will be all right?" Mag looked at Jane, who looked rather thin and weak, and felt a little worried. I will be." Jane nodded, and confidently said, "I am very strong, and a unicorn demon's natural talent is endurance. Although I look very thin, I could run one round Carapace Island carrying 100 kilograms of goods on my back." However, this restaurant looked like it was newly opened, and even the tables and chairs looked brand new. Jane wondered why the boss was so confident that the business would be very good. It wasn't easy to run a business on Carapace Island. Those demons would often dine and dash because they thought they were very powerful. Even having a protective amulet would only ensure that they wouldn't thrash the shop. "That's good." Mag kept all the big plates that he used for training. He couldn't ask of a server that they recruited at the very last minute for too much. A good work attitude was the most important, as the rest could be slowly trained. "Grew all right then," a weird grumble sounded. "Big Sister Jane's tummy is growling." Amy came forward and touched Jane's stomach gently. "She's so hungry that her tummy is flat." Jane blushed with embarrassment. "Perfect. It's almost noon, so let's have lunch. We can start work after that." Mag glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 10:30 am, which was the perfect time to make lunch. Mag made the garlic crayfish for lunch. Every one of them was having a 1 kilogram garlic crayfish each. Underneath the crayfish was bean vermicelli that was soaked with the garlic sauce. This aroma! How could it be so enticing and beautiful? Jane sat upright at the table, and stared at the big red prawn in the plate in front of her. The shell was sliced open from the head all the way to the tail, and golden minced garlic was drizzled over the center of the opened-up crayfish. The aroma washed all over her, and there was nowhere she could hide from it. She already couldn't remember how many times she gulped secretly, and her tummy started to growl as if it was complaining why she hadn't started eating to comfort it. "Let's eat. There's no need to be shy." Mag smiled as he ripped off the crayfish's head deftly, and removed the split crayfish's shell easily. The minced garlic became golden after it was stir-fried, and then it was laid on the crayfish butter, glistening with oil. Together with the crayfish, they gave out an enticing aroma. Mag sucked on the crayfish's head, and the crayfish butter with the minced garlic activated the taste buds instantly. The minced garlic's texture was very mild. The stir-frying had removed the spiciness, and at the same time activated the strong fragrance of the garlic. The intricate cutting skills and precise heat made each and every grain taste perfect. Eating the fresh crayfish butter together with the aromatic and savory garlic made one's soul leave its body and float into the heavens. He could still taste the crayfish butter in his mouth even after swallowing it. "This is indeed made by me. So, I wasn't wrong when I scolded them then." Mag couldn't help but praise in his heart. Only a garlic crayfish like this was worthy of the word delicious. "Host, your thinking is very dangerous. Please show the remorse and respect that you should have. Even if you're just pretending, the system warned. Am I not speaking the truth? I really think that the crayfish that I made are more delicious than the ones they did, Mag replied confidently with a smile on his face. His thinking was naturally already different from the one that he first had after slogging days and nights in the kitchen. After all, he was standing on the shoulders of countless chefs, and every chef who had focused on cooking should be respected. Slurp. Amy made a gentle sound as she sucked in a mouthful of bean vermicelli. After she chewed and swallowed, she happily said to Mag, "Father, these chewy and long noodles are so delicious." "This is bean vermicelli, not noodles," Mag corrected her with a smile. "Anyway, it's super delicious." Amy wasn't in a hurry to eat the crayfish, and she began eating the bean vermicelli first instead. The minced garlic bean vermicelli had always been a very delicious existence. Jane observed how Mag and his family ate for a while before following Mag's example, and grabbing that big crayfish's head carefully to twist it off. She removed the shell on the crayfish's body before biting on the head. Crack! The delicious minced garlic was already emitting a beautiful scent in the mouth, but her action faltered just as her teeth bit the hard crayfish's shell. "You only need to suck on the crayfish butter. You don't have to eat the shell," Mag explained smilingly. "Yes." A blush quickly rose up on Jane's cheeks as she murmured a reply. She turned her body away slightly before she released her teeth and started to suck in. The crayfish butter and minced garlic indeed were sucked into the mouth very easily. This taste! Jane's eyes flashed, and revealed an expression of disbelief. The rich and aromatic minced garlic was the first to release an unbelievable taste, and the dormant taste buds were activated instantly. At first, they were at a loss and panicked, but they were soon conquered, and began to accommodate that exquisite taste crazily. After that, the fresh crayfish butter began to enter the stage. It, which was enhanced by the minced garlic, was the real main character. If she hadn't tasted it herself, she would never have believed that such scrumptiousness actually existed. An ordinary-looking big prawn was, in fact, transformed into such intense scrumptiousness in Mag's hands. "Sorry," Jane said embarrassedly as she immediately put down the bowl and covered her mouth. Irina lowered her chopsticks gracefully, and asked Jane, "What's the matter with burping? Fairies got to fart too. Are you full, Goldie Horn?" While Mag was cooking, Irina and Amy were in a discussion, and they finally decided to give Jane a nickname. "I'm full." Jane nodded and smiled shyly. She didn't mind the nickname Goldie Horn. Instead, she rather liked it. Apart from her mother, no other demons had ever cared about her name, and would have never given her a charming nickname. Goldie Horn sounded even cuter than Jane. Furthermore, she could sense kindness and friendliness from Irina and Amy. Ever since her mother passed away, she had been hiding every day. Every demon that she met could very possibly kill or violate her, but she could feel a sense of security here. "All right, lunch is over. I need to go prepare for the noon service." Mag got up and prepared to clear the silverware. "This would be my job." Jane stood up instantly and cleared Mag's bowls and silverware first before stacking the rest of the bowls together, and swept all the crayfish's shells into the trash bin. "All right." Mag retrieved his hands as he looked at Jane, who was fast and efficient. It seemed like she was even more suitable for this job than he had expected. Since Jane was clearing the table, Mag went into the kitchen to carry a giant pot out of the empty space that was reserved in the center of the yard. For a new restaurant, using the aroma to attract the customer's attention would be the simplest and fastest method. Even though the II Crayfish restaurant wasn't opened in the most prosperous area on Carapace Island, it was still next to a main street that many demons would pass by. Many demons' attention was attracted by the new house like this. However, they retrieved their gazes in boredom after they saw the protective amulet on the door. It was not an easy target with the 10 Kings Palace's protective amulet. "Uncle Hades, are you going to start cooking the crayfish?" Justin, who was crouching against the fence, widened his eyes as soon as he saw Mag came out. Yes. We are starting our business officially this noon. Mag nodded and smiled. It seemed like this little rock troll was completely mesmerized by the scrumptiousness of the crayfish. Father, Mother. Come out now. Uncle Hades from next door is going to start his business soon. Let's have crayfish for lunch today, Justin shouted into the house. Mag smiled as he turned back to process the crayfish. He had only planned to release the spicy crayfish at noon today. There wasn't a stable stream of customers yet. It was a bother to do a few types, and he couldn't ensure the crayfish could be eaten at the best timing if he cooked too many of them. Hence, he chose to do one flavor that was strong and impactful. He scooped the crayfish out of the pond, and cleaned them under the running water to wash away the sand on their surface. Different from the crayfish that were reared in the ditches and fields, the crayfish reared by the system could already be considered as seafood, so he only needed to wash away the soil on its body. The struggling crayfish were splashed into a daze by the running water. Right at that moment, the cleaver flashed across, and the perfect back opening action was completed. Mag flicked his finger at the tails to devein the crayfish before tossing them into a big basin at the side. The entire process took less than 3 seconds. That's an expert. Justin was staring at him with wide eyes at the fence. That cleaver moved so fast that he couldn't even follow its actions with his eyes. That crayfish couldn't even begin to struggle, and its back was already open while it was tossed into the basin. Within moments, the basin was already full of processed crayfish. Justin pointed at Mag to Gamina, who just came out from the door, as he asked, "Mother, I want to learn that." "You want to learn everything that you see?" Gamina smacked him right away. Yvonne followed her out of the door. "It's a good thing that the child wants to learn. It's his future, we must give him a ch. Are you trying to challenge me?" Gamina turned around to look at him. Chicken, you're so beautiful." Yvonne swayed his body, averted his gaze, and suddenly began humming. Justin hugged his head and aggrievedly said, "Then I want to eat crayfish. Let's go." As their neighbors, it's only natural that we give him our support as their first customers. Gamina led the way and walked out of their yard. "Alrighty." Elation flashed across Justin's face, and he swiftly caught up with her. "Welcome, neighbors." Mag smiled at the rock troll family as they walked through the door. Without any surprises, that grilled crayfish yesterday had achieved the effect of attracting a batch of customers to the restaurant. "The restaurant looks fantastic. Are the tables and chairs custom made?" Gamina looked around her, and her gaze landed on the black stone table and chairs. Carapace Island didn't produce this kind of stone which looked simple and elegant. They're simply ordinary stones. Mag seated the family of 3 smilingly before asking, "Do you want to have some crayfish?" Justin quickly nodded. He hadn't eaten anything since morning in order to reserve his stomach for the crayfish at noon. "Do you have the menu?" "We would like to see the menu," Gamina asked instead of agreeing immediately. "Currently, the restaurant will only be serving spicy crayfish and beer." Mag turned the number tag on the table around, and the menu was on the back. Spicy crayfish 100 copper coins each. Beer, chilled, 50 copper coins a mug. Gamina stared at the menu that had only 2 choices in a slight shock. The crayfish was actually sold as a whole, and it cost 100 copper coins each. And that so-called beer also cost 50 copper coins for a mug. Their pricing was way above the rest of the normal restaurants on Carapace Island. It would only cost their family of 3 100 copper coins to have a full meal of crabs, prawns, and fish at a small restaurant. There was also a hint of shock on Ivan's face. Even though the two of them could earn up to 10,000 copper coins a month from their jobs of pulling in the fishing nets at the fish farm, they had never had crayfish that cost 100 copper coins each and mugs of beer that cost 50 copper coins each. Gamina retrieved her gaze, and said to Mag, "We will have 3 spicy crayfish then." "All right. Please wait a minute. I still need to go get some tools," Mag replied smilingly as he turned and walked into the restaurant. Jane, who could only stand at the side and watch, quickly followed Mag in to see if she could help to carry anything. Why are they so expensive? Although the crayfish he made is indeed very delicious, if it costs 100 copper coins, not many demons would be willing to spend the money, Yvonne whispered to Gamina. However, he had been gulping his saliva many times secretly. If Justin's change of shell was triggered by this crayfish, it could still be considered cheap even if it cost 10,000 copper coins each, Gamina replied calmly. Dear, you're ever so wise when it comes to important matters. Yvonne gave her a thumbs up respectfully before going up to her. With a shy chuckle, he said, I haven't changed my shell for a long time too. If I changed my shell again, I would be a 4th-tier demon, and our family status would elevate. If it's effective, then Justin will have a few more. His talent is better than yours. Gamina threw Yvonne a look. Mother, I love you. Justin hugged Gamina with a blissful expression before making a funny face at Yvonne smugly. I'm so lonely. Yvonne sighed desolately. What to do? He was already completely captivated by that one pincer yesterday. Compared to his usual pricing that was 4-5 times the cost of the ingredients, this price was already more than fair. Perhaps he had grown a conscience? Nope. He just wanted to complete his mission as soon as possible. Even if Mag priced the crayfish at 500 copper coins, given its flavor, Mag didn't have to worry that he would starve. However, such crayfish would only be the delicacy of the few, and the majority of the customers would be kept out of the restaurant. The Mamie restaurant positioned itself as a high-class restaurant, and its exorbitant pricing had already made sure that its customer base was the minority. It wasn't discrimination, but it was the value of the dishes that were made from the very best ingredients and the very best culinary skills. However, for II Crayfish Restaurant, Mag decided to go with the cheap food stalls style. 100 copper coins wasn't cheap for the majority of the demons, but at least the portion weighed 1 kilogram each, and normal demons could still afford it if they tried hard enough. Hence, it could have a huge customer base. Mag didn't come to Carapace Island to earn money. His focus was to complete the mission of catching the system's 300,000 crayfish. And, his plan was, eat them up. Using Carapace Island as the center point and radiate outward over the whole Demon Islands archipelago, he wanted to cultivate a bunch of chowhounds who loved crayfish with the delicious crayfish dishes. As long as he cultivated their love for it, the demons would be the crayfish's #1 natural enemy. Why could edible species never conduct a large-scale foreign species invasion in China? The answer is very simple: they don't have the time to grow. The crayfish was initially an example of an invasive species, and it was eaten to the point that it became a rare species. If it weren't for all the rearing farms, it would have already gone extinct. This was an example that had been successfully proven. Mag wasn't very confident that he could complete the mission of catching 100 crayfish in the vast ocean, but as long as he could solve the problem of species invasion and overrun, and create a natural enemy that the crayfish couldn't defend against, this mission was no different from being completed. Promoting by concession was only one of Mag's plans to popularize the crayfish. The cheap and good crayfish would soon become the favorite supper on Carapace Island. It's cheap. Jane was rather speechless. To her, 100 copper coins was already a lot of money. She could only earn 10 copper coins after selling the seashells that she picked for the whole day, and one crayfish would have cost her 10 working days of picking seashells at the beach. It was awfully expensive. However, this crayfish was so incredibly delicious. She still felt as if she was in a dream when she thought about it now. Perhaps it was so expensive because it was so divine. Mag nodded his head, and lamented, if we had been in another place now, they would have gone crazy. He walked out and put the wooden rack down before placing all the spices and condiments on it accordingly. Then, Mag's gaze became razor sharp and calm after he fastened his apron and buttoned his cuffs. Jane, who was standing at a side, watched Mag, who was standing in front of the wok, in an amazement. She felt that he seemed to have transformed into another person at that instant. He lit up the fire, and then grasped the big iron wok 2 meters wide with a towel as he swirled it around on the stove to ensure the wok was heated up evenly. He poured the oil into the wok, and heated the oil until it was 70% hot before adding in the prepared ginger and garlic to stir fry. Then, he continued to add in a big bunch of dried chili and spices into the wok to stir fry. The spices' fragrance was released immediately, and the rock troll family and Jane couldn't help but stretch out their neck to look at him curiously. Does he have to be so over the top when it's just cooking? Does he have to use such a big pot for 3 crayfish? And what's all that funny stuff? Although this aroma is nice, it's also very pungent. Gamina frowned. Anyway, she couldn't recognize any of the spices that he was using. However, the spices' aroma after they were stir-fried made her even more curious. After stir-frying the spices, Mag poured the entire basin of prepared crayfish into the wok, and turned the fire all the way up as he grabbed the huge spatula with one hand while holding the handle of the wok with the other, and stir-fried the crayfish. The greenish-black crayfish became red gradually. Its aroma began to merge with the spices, and then spread everywhere. That smells great! Justin gulped as he stared at the red crayfish in the wok. He already couldn't wait to have one. This aroma is completely different from the grilled crayfish yesterday. But why are they equally enticing and irresistible? Gamina looked at the crayfish being tossed around in the giant wok by Mag. Although she didn't want to admit, this mala spicy's aroma was indeed unbelievably enticing. Ah, I've died. Ivan placed his head on the table and glared at the crayfish in the wok. He only got to eat 1 pincer yesterday, so he was going to have a whole crayfish to himself no matter what today. The aroma of the stir-fried spicy crayfish rose up in the yard before slowly drifting out of the yard and onto the streets. Smells so good. What's that smell? It seems to come from there. In a short while, dozens of demons were already standing outside the yard and staring at Mag, who was frying the crayfish curiously. They saw the crayfish in the wok, and realized that the aroma had come from them as they swallowed their saliva unconsciously. This seems like a restaurant. A Minotaur demon looked up at the signboard. This was the first time that he had seen a crayfish restaurant, but this aroma was simply too tempting. I didn't see it when I passed by previously. Seems like it's newly opened. It's a pity that it has a protective amulet, a demon that had 2 leopards' heads said regrettably as he swept his cold gaze across the huge protective amulet hanging in an obvious position at the door. This method of cooking is so special. This is the first time I've seen something like this. Although it smells great, I wonder what it tastes like. A voluptuous succubus looked at Mag with a smile. Moreover, this chef looks rather handsome. Really? But his technique isn't as good as mine. A bulky demon got close to her from behind, and extended his hands toward her waist. Oh, really? That succubus turned around and smiled at him seductively. A gleam flashed through her green and blue eyes. The demon was stunned, and halted his actions. And right then, that succubus suddenly lifted her leg and kicked his crotch. Together with an egg-shattering sound, that bulky demon flew backwards and crash-landed on the street 10-odd meters away. He covered his groin and screamed in pain. How dare you touch me without paying? You're asking for death. That succubus put down her foot and swept her gaze across all the demons around her. All the male demons put their legs together instinctively. Those demons who had wanted to take advantage of her began to back up. This was a tough character. Chapter 1331. Were there any women more beautiful than Irina? Her voluptuous body was dressed in a pair of black leather shorts. She had a head of sexy, wavy hair and a pair of almond-shaped eyes, which made that mesmerizing face even more seductive. All the succubus advantages could be found on her. This was a woman that no man could move his eyes away from. And she happened to be looking at Mag. Their gazes locked onto each other. That was a pair of greenish-blue eyes. The mysterious and seductive eyes suddenly began to swirl as if it was trying to drag him into a mysterious place. However, Mag swiftly retrieved his gaze as soon as their eyes locked onto each other as he secretly complained seductress before he continued frying his crayfish. What a joke! It was already bad enough he got tricked by the stone statue. He would really be an amateur if a succubus managed to mesmerize him too. However, this succubus had at least an 8th tier power. Succubi were a lowly demon tribe, and its members' power were normally around the first 2 tiers. This succubus's power had surprised him. Angela made a surprised sound. This fellow actually shook off her eyes of enchantment. Could he be an expert? Or he was simply an inexperienced little virgin? Angela began to look at Mag with an interested gaze. Mag put in a dash of salt when the crayfish's shells turned red completely. He gave them a toss before pouring in sufficient beer to cover the crayfish, and then placed a cover over the wok. The spicy aroma was restrained instantaneously. "Uncle Hades, are the crayfish ready?" Justin asked impatiently. "No. This is only the beginning." Mag smiled and shook his head. The step of braising the crayfish in beer was very important. It was akin to infusing a soul into the crayfish. It couldn't be rushed or avoided. Putting the spatula away, Mag said to the demons who were watching outside, "Ladies and gentlemen, why don't you come in to try the spicy crayfish that is almost ready?" All the demons had a hesitant look even when the restaurant's owner extended his invitation. Although the aroma was very enticing, nobody knew how this crayfish tasted. "All right. I happen to be hungry." Angela walked in and stared at Mag. She activated her eyes of enchantment on Mag again. "Please have a seat." Mag smiled at her calmly. Women were most probably the least enticing thing to him. Were there any women more beautiful than Irina? Was there another woman who could defeat her? No. So, what was there to argue about? Even he couldn't beat her. It actually doesn't work. Angela was stunned. She was sure that Mag's gaze didn't avoid hers, and he had received her eyes of enchantment completely. Then, there could only be one possibility left. What a pity. He already can't get it up when he's only this young. Angela gave Mag a piteous look before she randomly found a place to sit down. Mag could sense the look that the succubus gave him was full of meaning. Since he couldn't ask her why, he decided to play dumb. Excuse me, what would you like to order?" Jane asked Angela nervously as she went forward. This was her first time speaking to strangers like that. "Crayfish? I want to eat what he's cooking now." Angela pointed to the huge pot in front of Mag. She wouldn't be wasting her time eating here if it wasn't for this enticing aroma. "This is the spicy crayfish. Please look at the price." Jane deftly turned the table's number card around to show her the menu. "Spicy crayfish, 100 copper coins each." Angela read it out. After some pondering, she said, "Then I will have 2. And give me a mug of this whatever beer." All right." Jane quickly nodded and looked toward Mag. "I heard that." Mag nodded with a smile. This girl needed to accumulate her work experience. However, it was normal to be nervous to receive customers for the first time. So expensive. Aren't prawns sold according to their weight? Why is it being sold individually here? It's such a big prawn that weighs about 1 kilogram each, so it's not that expensive. I can still accept it. The demons standing out there began to voice out their shock. Some of them found it expensive, and simply walked away. Others found the price reasonable, but they decided to observe others eat first. It was good that others tried it out for them first, and they wouldn't waste 100 copper coins. After the beer was boiled and waiting for 3 minutes, Mag removed the cover to reduce the sauce. The mala's aroma followed the steam up into the air, and began to spread out again. There was also a light alcohol fragrance within it which was intoxicating. Some demons left because of the pricing, but many more demons were attracted by the aroma, and started to gather around and look into the yard. What an amazing aroma! Angela stared at the giant wok that had the red sauce boiling in it with bright eyes. She also began to look at Mag with a different gaze. Although this man couldn't get it up, he was fantastic at cooking. She didn't expect to find a demon so good at cooking at Carapace Island. Maybe she should kidnap him? This smells like spicy grilled fish. It's different from what we had for lunch. Right at that moment, Amy ran out of the restaurant and moved her tiny nose to take a big sniff of the air. She said to Mag with surprise, "Father, is this a new crayfish's flavor? So adorable." Angela looked at Amy. What an exquisite little fellow. Her red clothes resembled the cooked crayfish shell, and she had a pair of pincers on her head, which made her look utterly adorable. Even she was tempted to touch that pair of pincers. "It smells very spicy." Irina followed her out. She furrowed her brows slightly when she smelled the spicy scent in the air. She preferred the garlic crayfish more as its taste was milder. "Why don't you rest over there? It's a little smoky here," Mag told Irina gently. After all, he was trying to use the aroma to attract the customers. So beautiful." Angela's eyes lit up as soon as she saw Irina. This demoness dressed in a simple black skirt had exquisite facial features, long and straight legs, distinct collarbones, and a well-endowed bosom that was comparable to hers. Most importantly, she had noble and elegant grace that resembled a goddess. It was totally different from the normal demons. "Oh no, it's the feeling of attraction." Angela pressed on her heart before suddenly glaring at Mag. This fellow actually married this beauty? And that adorable child is theirs? No, it can't be real. It's obvious that he can't get it up. However, before she could smile fully, Irina already ignored and turned her gaze onto Mag again as she watched him cook intently. He is an incredibly lucky fellow. He actually married such unbelievable beauty as her. Angela looked at Mag angrily, and decided that she was going to rescue this sister out of her predicament after completing her current mission. After reducing the sauce with a big fire, a layer of red oil was glistening on the red crayfish's shell. The large amount of red chili made one's throat feel hot simply by looking at them. "Let's send this to our customers," Mag told Jane as he placed the crayfish on a big plate one by one before placing them onto a tray. Jane lifted the tray up gingerly, and then placed the 3 plates of crayfish in front of the family of rock trolls and Angela before saying, "Your spicy crayfish, please enjoy." Then, she filled up the beer with a big stone mug and placed it in front of Angela gently. "Your beer. Whoa, this crayfish is fantastic." Justin, who had been craving it for a long time, gulped audibly. He reached out to grab a pincer and stuff it into his mouth. The freshly cooked crayfish was still piping hot, but the rock troll's tough stone casing allowed them to ignore such a temperature. "It's so spicy." Justin's grayish-white face turned greenish-red as soon as he placed that pincer into his mouth. Steam even came out from his head. The spicy gravy on the pincer seemed to have doused the taste buds with a ladle of hot water, and numbed the tongue immediately. The spiciness traveled from the tongue, and soon heated up the entire body. "What's going on?" Gamina swiftly asked. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Justin had already cracked open the shell. The tender meat within it finally began to release a wonderful taste in his mouth together with the spicy texture. The spicy taste was very enjoyable as it got spicier and more flavorful as he chewed. He mumbled, "Hot, but it's so scrumptious." Gamina relaxed after seeing Justin finish the pincer and move on to twist off the head. She, too, reached out to twist off the crayfish's head. On the other side, Yvonne had already pulled open the crayfish's shell hurriedly, and removed the meat from the shell. He thought for a moment as he looked at the red gravy. Then, he dipped the meat into the gravy and bit into it. Oh, my heavens! The spicy gravy and the supple crayfish meat merged together perfectly. The spiciness activated the taste buds completely before rushing all the way up to his brain, and the heat almost surged through his scalp. The spicy gravy had seeped into the meat perfectly, and all the spices gave it a tantalizing scrumptiousness. As he chewed, he could sense the beautiful bounciness of the collision between the teeth and the meat. Spicy and aromatic. Ivan had totally no idea how to describe this beautiful taste. Eating the meat without the shell was indeed nicer than eating it together, and he could experience the meat's marvelous texture perfectly. The meat dipped with sauce made the spiciness even more intense. Although the tongue was already totally numb, his mouth simply couldn't stop, and the tender crayfish's meat was soon all eaten. Ivan sucked in the gravy on his fingers before picking up the remaining crayfish's shell and head. He chewed on the crayfish's shell. Compared to the crispy texture of yesterday's grilled crayfish, this shell, which was coated with the spicy gravy, had another kind of enjoyable taste. The family of rock trolls were enjoying their food with the occasional exclamations and praises, and that attracted the customers watching outside slowly. They sat down and ordered a crayfish each. And on the other side, Angela's attention was also completely attracted by the crayfish in front of her. The bright red crayfish was even bigger than her face. Its shell was split open from its head all the way to its tail, revealing the supple meat within. The spicy aroma greeted her together with the steam. She heard that humans loved to cook their food with all kinds of spices, but the demons weren't as particular as humans. Their food was rougher. "It smells good, but I wonder how it tastes," Angela murmured. She didn't see any silverware, so she decided to use her hands. She twisted a pincer off, and then pried open the shell to reveal the tender underneath it. "It looks the same as those cooked with the usual methods." Angela was a little disappointed. She dipped the meat into the gravy haphazardly, and then fed it into her mouth. "Ugh!" Angela's expression changed as soon as the meat entered her mouth. The unexpected spiciness exploded at the tip of her tongue as if an incendiary bomb exploded in her mouth, and the spicy sensation burst out instantaneously. "Rib!" A loud ripping sound eventuated. Her short black top was ripped open, and her bosom almost spilled out of it. All the demons couldn't help looking over at her, but their gazes were blocked by some holy light one, and they weren't able to admire that beautiful scene. Angela couldn't care about that at all, because the supple crayfish meat had already entered the stage after the spiciness. It was as if the gentle spring breeze calmed the huge waves down before plunging into the deep waters. The spicy taste together with the crayfish meat that was supported by all the different spices released a scrumptiousness that made her breathless. Seafood was the most common food when one lived on an island. But this mouthful of crayfish had subverted all her understanding of seafood from the past 20 years. "This is simply too delicious." Angela's inner heart was screaming as she accommodated this suffocating scrumptiousness without any reservations. There were really people who could elevate the same food to unbelievable delicacies. Angela opened her eyes and looked at the mag who was in the midst of plating. That man was obviously such an existence. Then, she moved her gaze to Irina at the side. She seemed to have gained an understanding that this man's astonishing culinary skills had a lot to do with him being able to marry this beauty. However, he really can't get it up. Angela was still feeling discontent as she stared at Mag while munching on the crayfish. The hot sensation in her mouth and throat after finishing a pincer made her rather uncomfortable even though it tasted fantastic. Her gaze landed on the beer on the table. Even though it had weird bubbles in it, she still picked it up and took a big gulp. One probably a reference to an anime censorship method where sunlight from the window etc. obscures the view. Chapter 1333 Exile This idiot who dines and dashes. This alcohol is rather special, and it's a perfect match with this spicy crayfish. Angela's eyes lit up. The alcohol's fragrance was similar to a flower's, which was elegant and mild. The smooth bubble burst and made a soft sound. A bite of spicy crayfish followed by a big mouthful of chilled beer, this combination made Angela look more and more gratified. So scrumptious food could actually make eating an enjoyable affair. The rock troll family who was eating happily and Angela, who was indulging herself, soon attracted the demons who were gathered around them inside the yard, and it was soon filled with customers. Jane walked around the customers. Although everyone only ordered one crayfish at first, she was afraid to miss their orders. Of course, what surprised her the most was that the restaurant had really attracted a lot of customers on its opening day. This was totally beyond her expectation and imagination. Mag dished out the crayfish for the customers while preparing to cook the second batch of spicy crayfish. The customer's warm response was a little beyond his expectation. The startup was much smoother than he had imagined. The spicy and aromatic crayfish had brought him his first batch of customers with its aroma. As the yard was slowly filled up, more and more passers-by were attracted by them, and they would become his potential customers. Ivan's family had finished all the 3 crayfish including their shells. Ivan picked up the bowl and took a sip of the spicy gravy. He allowed the spicy taste to run amok in his mouth before putting down the bowl and wiping his sweat away. Still feeling unsatisfied, he asked Gamina, "Dear, should we order another one?" "Yes, yes. I'm still not full yet," Justin swiftly chimed in. Gamina was a little hesitant. After all, they obviously couldn't be eating crayfish that cost 100 copper coins each every day. "Hey! Look, is my hand going to change its shell soon?" Ivan suddenly lifted his hand. Thin and fine white cracks started to appear on his grayish-white stone shell as if the latter was going to shatter soon. "Are you going to change your shell for the 4th time?" Gamina grasped Ivan's hand with surprise on her face. "I didn't have these when I woke up in the morning." Ivan also couldn't hide his excitement. After thinking for a brief moment, he pointed at the big empty bowl in front of him. "It gotta be this crayfish. The cracks only appeared after I ate the crayfish. I feel I could eat a few more crayfish so I could change my shell for the 2nd time," Justin added. Gamina pondered for a while. She, too, felt a warmth all over her body when she was eating that crayfish. Her shell felt itchy as if something was trying to come out from her body. Justin changed his shell after eating 1 whole crayfish yesterday, and Ivan was about to change his shell after eating 1 crayfish today. It seemed like this crayfish had a very immense beneficial effect on them, the rock trolls. "We will have 3 more crayfish," Gamina said to Jane. "Sure. Please give us a moment." Jane nodded. Mag was still cooking his second batch of crayfish. Angela also raised her hand, and indicated, "1 more crayfish and another mug of beer, chilled, please." She only now discovered her collar had opened up then. She rearranged her collar leisurely before looking at Mag with a completely different gaze. "This fellow's culinary skills are really very tantalizing. If I kidnapped and brought him to our island, my sisters would all get to enjoy fabulous food." Angela curled her lips slightly, and then looked at Irina and Amy. "If I could bring this sister along, it would even be better." The spicy crayfish shocked the taste buds of the island's native demons. Together with the 30+ Celsius degree heatwave, all the demons were struggling in between the scrumptiousness and spiciness. And right at that moment, an iced cold beer simply saved everything. The demons sat around the tables as they peeled away the shells and chowed down the meat with a mouthful of beer. Such a combination had surpassed all other delicacies. "Dear, you settle the bills first. I gotta go home to change my shell." Ivan got up to walk out. Chips of mud casings had already begun to fall off his body. Cracks of all sizes covered his entire body as if he was going to shatter the very next moment. Gamina got up and discovered fine cracks were beginning to appear on her body. She passed 6 gold coins to Irina with a smile, and praised, "Mr. Hades' culinary skill is simply astonishing and humbling. He will get cocky if you praise him like this." Irina smiled as she accepted the gold coins. Gamina dragged Justin, who still wanted to have 1 more crayfish, home with her. The crayfish that cost 100 copper coins each and the beer that cost 50 copper coins a mug weren't cheap. However, the demons who had them were subdued by that marvelous taste, and most of them were willing to pay the bills. 5 crayfish and 10 mugs of beer. The total is 10 gold coins. Irina extended her hand toward the two-faced demon who was already drunk. 10 gold coins. The two-faced demon, who had an ugly face at both the front and back of his head, stood up shakily. He looked at Irina with an evil gaze and smirked. "Lass, can you see what I've eaten? There's nothing on this table. Where's the proof that I have eaten anything? If I say I have eaten nothing, what can you do?" The demons who were eating began to look over at them. Many of them were prepared to watch a good show. If that could work, they wouldn't mind dining and dashing using the same method. After all, that fellow with a pair of pincers on his head didn't seem to be someone who could fight. However, his wife was so beautiful that it made them envious. Amy walked over and seriously said to that two-faced demon, "You will pay for your meal, or we will kill you." "Ha! Get lost, imp!" The two-faced demon looked at Amy with disdain before saying to Irina with an evil gaze, "You want payment? Sure, let me have a good time, and I'll give you the money." Then, he started to reach for Irina's bosom with his hands that were full of blood blisters. "Oh no!" Jane was shocked, and began to dash forward with the tray in her hands. "This is a good opportunity." The eyes of Angela, who was wiping her mouth, lit up. The chance to rescue the beauty had just presented itself. In this yard, apart from her, nobody could save this beauty at such a perilous time. They couldn't be depending on that man who was still cooking the crayfish and pretending he hadn't seen a single thing, right? "Stupid bastard," Irina said coldly. A stool suddenly appeared in her hands as she slapped it across that two-faced demon's head. That head with one black and one white face spun like a top for a dozen rounds. His short and thick neck was twisted into a braid, and lifted his fat body up into the sky as it spun. "Explode your reality, shatter your spirit. Exile this idiot who dines and dashes." Amy lifted her hand up and threw out a ball of fire. Boom! The two-faced demon who was spinning up into the sky exploded into a dazzling firework. Nothing was left of him. "Why, oh why?" Mag sighed. "What a courageous fellow! And he was killed by a stool so easily and utterly. Not even a trace of him was left. Who could have imagined that such a beautiful demoness and such an adorable little demon could possess such a strong power and a healthy willingness to kill?" Gulp! The Minotaur demon who was sharing a table with that two-faced demon gulped audibly, and lowered his bull head slowly. He was suddenly very glad that he hadn't joined in the commotion earlier. Otherwise, there would have been 2 fireworks that had exploded in the sky now. And those demons who had evil intentions earlier all began to look away. At the same time, they started to count the money in their pockets to make sure that they had enough to pay the bill. So formidable! Jane stared at Irina and Amy in a shock as she halted her dashing steps. That demon who looked so formidable to her was smacked into a star by Lady Boss and Little Boss. It was simply too unbelievable. Suddenly, she realized the remark that Irina had made in the morning, "Trouble? It doesn't exist," was just a very ordinary explanation. Angela, who got up suavely to save the beauty, stared at Irina, who was putting away her folding chair slowly, with a dazed expression. Her mouth was slightly agape, and little stars began to appear in her eyes. Coarse and bold words, smooth actions, and perfect coordination. Does she have to look so good? Angela clenched her fists as the conviction in her eyes became firmer. "I'm going to marry this woman soon or later." Check. Irina turned around and peered at Angela. Oh, yes." Angela blushed and rapidly nodded as she took out 3 gold coins from her pocket and passed to Irina. "Very good." Irina, who collected the check successfully, finally had a smile on her face. "The crayfish is delicious. I will be back again." Angela flipped her hair and smiled at Irina tempestuously. "Big sister, your bunnies are out," Amy reminded her. All the demons looked over. Ah! So glaring. A bright light made them close their eyes instinctively. Ah! Angela lowered her head to take a look, and quickly grabbed the collar that she didn't fasten earlier. "These bunnies looked good," Irina said seriously. Angela blushed. Wasn't this done by her usually? Why did things become opposite here? She twisted her head and ran off. The two-faced demon who turned into a firework became the opening firework for the crayfish restaurant. At the same time, it made the demons who had other thoughts concentrate on eating the scrumptious crayfish in front of them. "This is my money. 4 crayfish and 2 mugs of beer. 5 gold coins. This is mine. 2 crayfish and 6 mugs of beer. 5 gold coins." Irina stood at the door, and the customers who were done with their meals respectfully handed her their money. They even told her what they had, and were much more respectful toward Jane too. Mag couldn't help but think they were still in Chaos City when he saw that scene. One had to know that this was Carapace Island, the most lawless place in the Demon Islands. On Carapace Island, peace and order wouldn't gain one any respect or money. Instead, they would become the target of bullying and oppression. Therefore, Mag didn't stop Irina from reacting. As long as she didn't reveal her identity, he would assist her in doing anything she liked, including tearing down the whole Carapace Island. Moreover, displaying their muscles would save them a lot of future trouble. At least they wouldn't have to deal with the ruffians looking for trouble with them every day. Mag ceased the service at around 1:30 am. "It's really great to collect money." Irina jiggled the small wooden box that she used to collect the money, which made a mesmerizing tingling sound before regretfully saying, "However, it isn't as fast as collecting protection money. Why don't we pick up our old profession again?" Irina looked at Mag with an enthusiastic expression. "Don't you know that the situation is tense recently? Law enforcement isn't easy. We don't have the time for it." Mag shook his head gravely. "What's the matter? We could execute a dog-eat-dog. The fellows from the Ten Kings Palace have become fatter in the past few years. It's time to harvest them. Then, we leave them alone for another few years before harvesting them again." Irina chuckled. "Do you take them as fat sheep?" Mag rolled his eyes and kept a minute of silence for the Ten Kings Palace in his heart. "That's a very apt description. We could only slaughter them when we're about to leave. If we did it now, it would be difficult to continue running a business in their territory." Mag shook his head. Roasting the sheep on their territory after slaughtering them was simply too cruel. "All right, let's keep them alive for a few more days." Irina nodded, and went back into the restaurant with the box. Jane was completely befuddled by their conversation. Although she couldn't quite understand what Boss and Lady Boss were talking about, her instincts told her it was something incredible. After all, they had involved Ten Kings Palace in the conversation. "Jane, you've done very well for this afternoon." Mag smiled at her. This lass looked thin and weak, but as she said, she had very good endurance. Even after making hundreds of trips, she still didn't look very tired. She could totally keep up with the work intensity. Jane blushed. This was the first time that someone besides her mother had praised her. She lowered her eyes and cleared the tables deftly. "Just put the dishes and silverware into the sink. I'll wash them later. You simply have to wipe the tables and chairs clean," Mag continued. "Boss, you have been very busy during the service. You should take a break, and I'll complete the rest of the work," Jane quickly replied to Mag. To her, Boss' job was holy and great because he had created such scrumptious food, and what she did was only the simplest job. "In that case, your workload will be too heavy and my conscience will feel bad." Mag took over the tray from Jane, and walked toward the restaurant. "Boss," Jane looked at Mag's back with reddened eyes. Mag placed all the dishes into the large dishwashing sink. He pressed the cleaning button, and the dishwasher started to work on its own. It would disinfect the dishes automatically after washing, and place them back neatly into the dishes cabinet. It was easy, clean, and fast. They sold 210 crayfish at the opening service at noon, which had totally exceeded his expectations. It could be considered as a perfect start. Bar any surprises, the first batch of customers who came at noon was going to return in the evening, and they would bring even more customers with them. Speaking from experience, a virtuous circle had started. Jane stumbled in with a pale face, and said, "BB boss, the people from Ten Kings Palace are here." But, Jane looked at Mag as she was very worried that the Ten Kings Palace came because of her. "We said we will protect you." Mag smiled as he let go and walked out of the restaurant. In the yard, a stocky abyss demon was rubbing the soil off the soles of his shoes with a stone chair, while another spatial demon was banging on the metal walk with the metal spatula, making a din. "May I ask, how may I help you, gentlemen?" Mag glanced at the wok and spatula in the spatial demon's hands and frowned slightly, but he wasn't in a hurry to react. "Are you the boss here?" That spatial demon looked at Mag with a small frown. What kind of demon was he? Why had he never seen them before? Was there a crayfish tribe amongst the demons? Yes. Mag nodded. The stocky abyss demon at the side put his foot down from the chair and strode over. He lifted his head and talked down to Mag. "I heard that you killed a demon who has a protective amulet. Are you going to revolt against the Ten Kings Palace? A two-faced demon who had caused trouble." Mag nodded before pointing at the huge protective amulet hanging next to the door, and calmly said, "If I remember correctly, according to the Ten Kings Palace's rules, demons who have the commercial protective amulets have the right to kill any demons who cause trouble in their shops, right?" "You," the abyss demon choked on his words. He had wanted to give this fellow a showdown first before squeezing some money out of him. He hadn't expected him to bring up the Ten Kings Palace's rules to counteract him. "Ha! You said he caused trouble. Was there any proof?" "I heard nothing was left of him." The spatial demon walked to Mag with the spatula and smirked. "If he hadn't caused trouble, why would I, a restaurateur, antagonize my customers? Because I was unhappy, so I killed a customer as an offering to heavens? Or because I found the customers too noisy, so I killed one to frighten off some others?" Mag looked at that spatial demon as if he was looking at a retard. "You," the spatial demon choked on his words too. What made him even more angry was the blatant sarcasm in this fellow's eyes. Mag sighed, and disappointedly said, "I heard the Ten Kings Palace managed this whole island very well when I first arrived at Carapace Island. That's why I came here to open a restaurant. If buying the protective amulet of the highest level still can't ensure a normal operation on Carapace Island, then I will have to go ask Ten Kings Palace for an explanation." This chapter. Anger appeared on both the spatial demons and abyss demon's face. They were only the lowliest personnel of the Ten Kings Palace. They could act tyrannically on Carapace Island because of their top 10 demon tribes' identities and the name of Ten Kings Palace. Nobody had ever defied them, let alone not giving them face like this. However, the protective amulets had brought the top 10 demon tribes a lot of income, so the top 10 demon tribes also regulated the role of protective amulets consciously in order to make more demons take the initiative to buy the protective amulet. If this matter reached the headquarters, they would get into trouble themselves instead of landing Mag in hot soup. The spatial demon pointed the spatula at Mag, and warned, "Let me warn you. You'd better behave yourself if you want to make a living on Carapace Island, otherwise I will make life difficult for you. I always follow the rules." Smiling, Mag grabbed the spatula's handle, and removed it from the spatial demon's hand. Looking at this spatial demon, he really couldn't get angry with him. After all, he killed his ancestor during his very first battle, and the spatial demon tribe's current unstable status was caused by him. In fact, he actually pitied him. As for that abyss demon, he should be rushing home to attend his chief's funeral in 2 days' time. He wondered if he could still look down on people then. The spatial demon and abyss demon could only leave in anger as they failed to cause any trouble for Mag. "Seems like we really have to slaughter this sheep," Mag murmured to himself thoughtfully as he watched those 2 demons retreating backs. "Boss is so formidable." Jane, who was hiding in the restaurant and watching the scene secretly, gazed upon Mag with admiration. His neither humble nor arrogant attitude and uncompromising confidence gave her a completely different understanding of him. On Carapace Island, all the demons were used to the Ten Kings Palace's oppression. She'd never imagine anyone would dare to resist them. Mag closed the yard's gates, and went back into the restaurant. He smiled at Jane, who was standing at the door. "Go and take a nap, Jane. Your room is upstairs. Let me bring you up." Jane answered softly, and followed Mag upstairs. Irina was playing with Amy, an ugly duckling, in the room, and Amy's tinkling laughter could be heard through the door's gap. "You will stay in this room." Mag opened a door at the other end of the corridor. It was a small simple room with a single bed, a dressing table, and a window that overlooked the back garden. There was a pot of orchid that was blooming on the windowsill, and the room had a faint flower scent. Jane's mouth was wide open for a long time in disbelief before she asked Mag, "Am I going to stay here? It's a little small, right?" Mag looked at the room that only had standing room for one person. Well, there was no other choice, as he only asked the system to add this in at the last minute. His study's space was already compressed, and if it had been bigger, it would have violated the building's rules. "No, no." Jane swiftly shook her head. "Please don't be mistaken. I didn't think this room was small. Instead, I think this room is too good. I have never stayed in such a nice room before. If I'm not suitable to live upstairs, I can sleep on the floor downstairs too." Even the floor downstairs was cleaner than the places where she had stayed before. Most importantly, it was safe. She felt the sense of security that she never had before right here. Mag felt a little heartache for Jane, who was panicking. It was hard to imagine what kind of life this maiden had before this. "This is your room. Take a break. You've worked very hard at noon, and it could get even busier in the evening," Mag said gently before closing the door. "My room," Jane murmured softly as her gaze swept through every corner of the room. She reached out to press on the bed gently. It felt so soft and warm. She sat down gently on the bed after a moment of hesitation. After a while, she reclined slowly and lay on the bed. "It's so comforting." A smile appeared on Jane's face. It felt warm and soft, as if she was back in her mother's bosom. A tear fell from the corner of her eye. Her mother might have survived if they had met Boss earlier. The Abyss Demon twisted his neck in annoyance, and said, "That chap. I really wanted to pull his pincers off and stab them into his talkative mouth." "It's fine. Since that fellow is running a business on Carapace Island, he will end up in our hands sooner or later." The spatial demon revealed an evil smile. "Nonsense. I had it right here on our Carapace Island. Go and tell your lies to the ghosts. There's nothing nice on our island. There's a newly opened crayfish restaurant. The taste of that spicy crayfish is heavenly. Together with a mug of icy cold beer, it was really beyond marvelous. I am your grandpa if I lied to you. Yes, right on that street. I Crayfish Restaurant. Its signboard is very obvious. All right. Let's go try it out tonight." "Oh, yes, let me give you some advice. Bring enough money, and don't even think of dine and dash." The lady boss and little boss blew a customer up as a firework, as an offering to the heavens. "They're so fierce. Fierce and cute, fierce and cute." Rumors about the Crayfish Restaurant spread out on Carapace Island rapidly. No matter if it was that mysterious and tasty crayfish, or that extremely beautiful but powerful and merciless lady boss, they had successfully piqued the interest of many demons. The death of a demon was no different to the death of a fly on Carapace Island. There wasn't any hoo-ha at all. 5 or 6 demons were found dead in an alley this morning. The Ten Kings Palace sent somebody to have a look, and because they couldn't find any clues, they simply buried the bodies and considered the case closed. The powerful demons enjoyed the fruits from exploiting the lowly demons, and had a decadent lifestyle. Meanwhile, the lowly demons tried ways and means to survive. Their greatest motivation every month was to save enough money to buy a protective amulet, and then continue to survive for another month. They couldn't see the end of such a life. Maybe they could only get out of this cycle on the day they died. However, a piece of news that brought a dash of hope and light to these lower caste demons began to make rounds on the island today. A restaurant called II Crayfish Restaurant was purchasing a kind of big prawns called crayfish for 50 copper coins each. Moreover, one didn't have to go out to the seas in a boat to catch these prawns. They could find many of them just by searching the beaches and shallow waters on Carapace Island. A fisherman caught 50 crayfish in the morning, and earned 2,500 copper coins from that boss. To the lowly demons, this was without a doubt a huge sum of money. As long as they could pay 10,000 copper coins, they could apply for the residence permit on the peripheral islands, and receive a certain level of protection from the demons on that island. They could then get out from Carapace Island. Hence, after the news spread in the fishermen's circles, many fishermen appeared on the beaches of Carapace Island. Many of them even bring their families along with them for the action. At 4:30 p.m., Mag opened the restaurant's door, and Kitar was already waving to him excitedly beyond the gates. "My lord, we have come here to sell the prawns." The eyes of the fishermen standing in a long line at the door widened as they looked at Mag. Many of them had never seen Mag before. "So many of you?" Mag stared at the line with more than 50 demons with a shocked expression. He hadn't expected the number of fishermen supplying the crayfish in the afternoon would increase so much. However, looking at those muddy fishermen with sparkling, hopeful eyes, Mag walked up to open the gates straight away, and said to all the demons, "Thank you for delivering the crayfish here. I will pay you 50 copper coins each for those crayfish which are still alive. I will take all that you have." Surprised and elated smiles appeared on all the demons' faces. At first, they were worried that this was just a lie, but it was real. This boss was really buying crayfish at the price of 50 copper coins each and without a limit. All those who came had caught the crayfish. Some had caught 3 to 5, while others caught dozens. They could earn quite a bit of money. Under Mag's request, all the demon fishermen lined up, and counted their crayfish before putting them into the pond. Mag struck out the dead crayfish and those that were not crayfish before paying the correct amount to the fishermen. Some fishermen were so excited upon receiving the money that they leaped up in joy on the spot. Most of them had a happy smile. Tuck caught 20-odd crayfish in the day, and received over 1,000 copper coins. He couldn't help but wipe off the tears on his face as he held the heavy money bag. He had gotten closer to his wish of leaving Carapace Island with his wife. He had also planned to go catch the crayfish tonight so he could save up the 10,000 copper coins as soon as possible. The young fisherman Kitar counted his money before stuffing it into his pocket. He had caught another 40-odd crayfish, and received 2,200 copper coins from Mag today. Including the 2,500 copper coins he earned in the morning, he had received close to 5,000 copper coins on this day alone. He curiously asked Mag, "My lord, this crayfish stings. How do you cook it? Is it really nice?" All the fishermen were also looking at Mag curiously. Many of them were stung by this crayfish today, and their hands were still numb. They really couldn't understand why this boss would pay 50 copper coins each to buy them. "The restaurant will be starting its service soon. If you want to know, you may stay and try it out yourself," Mag said smilingly as he turned on the tap to pour water into the pond. Because this batch of crayfish had mud on them, they needed an extra step of washing. "All right, then I will try it out. I was stung dozens of times by them today, so I will vent my anger by eating them." Kitar nodded. He felt so much more confident with the extra few thousands copper coins in his pocket. "Take a seat. Service will be starting at 5. Mag smiled. He had gained another customer. Kitar sat at a corner close to the door. He looked around, and his gaze landed on the standing number card on the table. His eyes widened as he exclaimed, spicy crayfish 100 copper coins each. Beer 50 copper coins a mug. 100 copper coins each. The fishermen who were still there were shocked. A few of them who were still thinking if they should stay to have a meal before going out to the sea halted just as they were about to sit down. They couldn't even bear to spend 10 copper coins to have a meal outside usually, let alone eating a crayfish that cost 100 copper coins. The fishermen hadn't expected that the crayfish would be sold at a high price. "Boss, you're such a nice person. Let's earn all the money together." Kitar looked at Mag and gave him a thumbs up. Even if Mag had decided to purchase the crayfish at the price of 10 copper coins, the fisherman would have also gone and caught the crayfish with great enthusiasm. Mag could still be selling the crayfish at 100 copper coins each. However, he decided to give them a chance to earn fast money by purchasing them at 50 copper coins each. "The time for collection tomorrow is 8 in the morning. You could still send the crayfish to me if you catch them." Mag smiled at the fisherman. All the demon fishermen smiled in acknowledgement, and then left excitedly with their buckets and nets. Many of them decided to go home to get their torch and continue their search tonight. They heard there were even more crayfish at night. Chapter 1337 Are we going to kill the pig tonight? This also meant that he had broken through successfully, and became a 4th tier rock troll. Although there was only a difference of 1 tier between the 3rd tier and 4th tier, it was the natural barrier in between a low tier and a mid-tier demon. Low-tier demons were looked down upon no matter where they went, but mid-tier demons would be recruited by some demon islands, and received a recognized identity. It does look different from the others' 4th-tier stone shells. Could this red be due to the crayfish? Justin's new shell had this red on it too, Gamina wondered with a twinkle in her eyes. However, she didn't show it obviously as she caressed Ivan's stone shell. "This is a sophisticated red, much nicer than theirs." Ivan smiled. He was very satisfied with his new stone shell. Mother's shell is starting to crack too. It must be due to Uncle Hades's crayfish. "Let's go and eat crayfish tonight too," Justin said with anticipation. "All right." Gamina nodded. "Dear, you're so adorable." Ivan looked at Gamina with amazement as he thought he had to spend some effort to convince her. He hadn't expected her to agree so readily. Gamina slapped Ivan's pouting face away, and calmly said, "Since eating the crayfish could increase our power, why should we reject it? Making money would only get easier after our power increased." "Dear is so wise." Ivan put up his thumb in admiration. He then got up and prepared to leave the house. The brisk business in the afternoon provided a stable customer base for the crayfish restaurant. At the same time, the reputation that had spread out attracted some demons too. The 10-odd tables in the yard were quickly filled up, and Mag set up another 10-odd tables on the street upon his customer's request. Mag wandered in between 3 large woks with a large spatula, as calm as a martial arts expert. His actions were fluid as he served the flavorful crayfish to his customers. The spicy and delicious crayfish with the icy and soothing beer lit up the crayfish restaurant's ambience. This crayfish is so finger-licking good. Spicy and exciting. Give me another too." A demon panted with red and swollen lips. Although Carapace Island had a notorious reputation, those notorious demons tamped themselves down in front of the delicacy. They were focused on enjoying the delicious food at that moment. At 9 p.m., all the crayfish were finished, and the feast ended. Mag had bought 1,050 crayfish today, and their average weight was 1 kilogram, which meant he had sold 2,000 kilograms just on the opening day alone. "I wanted to keep a low profile, but my power doesn't allow me to." Mag sighed. One most probably couldn't find anyone else who operated a crayfish restaurant the way he did. "It's full." Irina placed the wooden box that was bursting at its seams on the table with a satisfied smile. There was a demon causing trouble at the dinner service too. She sent him crashing into the street with her stool, and then confiscated all his assets. After that, the rest of the demons became very well behaved. So much money! Jane stared at the box that was full with gold coins, silver coins, and copper coins. She had never seen so much money in her life, and Boss had earned it in just one day. "This is only the beginning," Mag said lightly. It was only 100,000 copper coins. After deducting the cost, the profit was only 40,000 copper coins, and he could earn 300,000 to 400,000 in a day easily with the same intense workload in Mamie restaurant. Although he was earning money, he felt as if he had suffered a loss. "You have worked very hard today, Jane. After clearing the table, go wash up and rest," Mag said to Jane, who looked rather tired. She had undertaken the pivoting role in the restaurant today, and had done her job perfectly. However, a workload of this intensity was still too much for a 13-year-old girl. "I'm okay. I'm not tired at all." Jane shook her head, and her eyes were still very bright. When compared to the fear of living in the open, she had received the care and concern from the boss and lady boss, enjoyed delicious food, and rested on a comfortable bed in the restaurant. This hardship was, in actuality, negligible. "No way. Goldihorn has worked too hard. We need to recruit another employee," Irina told Mag. "I'm afraid it wouldn't be easy to recruit new employees." Mag also knew that it was difficult for Jane to work alone, but they were not going to stay there for long. Irina thought to herself, and then commented, "In that case, why don't I just go and catch one randomly? Let's plan this gradually." Mag smiled. This solution was too simple and violent. After all, they didn't come here to colonize the place, so it wasn't very nice to simply grab an employee randomly. Mag let Jane go for her rest after clearing the table, and the three of them changed into black clothes to blend into the night. Amy touched her black mask, and curiously asked, "Where are we going, Father?" "We're going to catch a demon," Mag said smilingly. He waved his hand, and Ozzy dived from the sky and landed on the balcony lightly. "Are we going to kill the pig tonight?" Irina asked expectantly. "We will keep the pig alive for 2 more days. Our target tonight is not him." Mag leaped onto the griffin's back with Amy. Irina followed suit by leaping up gracefully and sitting behind Mag. "Then whom are we catching today?" Irina asked perplexedly. "Simon's lover." Mag patted Ozzy's back gently as he ordered, "Ozzy, go to Flaming Island." Ozzy spread out its wings, took to the sky, and flew toward the northwest. Soon, a volcanic island appeared in Mag's view. There was an active volcano which was erupting in the center of the island. The red lava that was spewing out from the crater flowed to the sea from the northwestern direction. The streams of lava looked as if they were the veins of the earth. Water vapors and volcanic ashes shrouded the sky above the island. They could already feel the unusual heat before they even got close. Flaming Island was originally called Lava Island. When the lava demons were at their peak, this island was one of their territories. However, followed by the decline of the lava demons and the ascension of the flaming demons, the lava island ended up in the clutches of the flaming demons, and had its name changed to Flaming Island. "It should be that island." "Ozzy, let's go down," Mag said as he pointed at an island northwest of the Flaming Island. Chapter 1338 The assassin is super fierce. "Madam, the Lord loves you the most. He must be busy with the important matters in the clan, and couldn't make time to see you," a young demoness said softly. "Really?" Charlene smiled. There was a hint of seductiveness and confidence in her smile. Simmons indeed couldn't escape from her clutches. Although he was the chief of the Flaming Demon tribe, he was merely a little boy under her skirt. "Seems like this night is going to belong to the two of us again." Charlene retrieved her gaze and turned to look at that young demoness. She raised her chin, and coldly ordered, "On your knees." The purple-striped griffin circled one round in the sky above the island before flying sideways, and landing in a forest next to the crystal castle that was located near the sea. "Stay here, Ozzy." Mag patted Ozzy's head before leaping off the griffin's back with Amy in his arms. Irina, too, landed on the ground lightly before asking Mag, "Bloodbath?" "Air. Tactical bloodbath." Mag nodded. This island was used by Simmons, the chief of the Flaming Demons, to house his mistress. Mag had gotten its information from the Grey Temple's records. The mistress of this island was an imp mother demon and a favorite of Simmons. Simmons' former wife was an equally formidable 10th-tier Flaming Demon who had an equally strong familial background as Simmons. Therefore, he had to find somewhere else besides Flaming Island to house his mistress. Mag's purpose for this trip was to capture that imp mother demon. As for the other demons, killing them was the simplest method to handle them. The Flaming Demons were ranked 5th among the top 10 demon tribes. According to the information, they were very enthusiastic about expanding their territories, and were part of the pro-war faction together with the Abyss Demons among the demons. Let the war happen between the fractions which liked to fight. This was the method of using war to stop war that Mag had come up with recently. Amy blinked her eyes that were the only features of hers not covered, raising her staff up high, and said, "The assassin is prepared." Mag looked at Amy, who was dressed in black. This little one still looked very cute as an assassin. Smiling, he said, "Let's act now. The best is we can make Simmons think Alfred did this. Framing others? I'm the best at it." Irina took a giant hammer out of nowhere, and placed it over her shoulder with one hand before walking toward the crystal castle excitedly. Mag watched Irina walk with the aura of a conqueror and Amy coping her, placing her magic caster's staff on her shoulder and walking with an outstretched pace. Resigned, he followed after them. "Who's there?" a voice warned. Bam! A dull thud sound appeared, and the island shook with it. Irina walked on, dragging the hammer along. A flattened demon was deeply stuck in the stone crater. Nobody could make out what he looked like originally. "Who?" "Bam! You bam! Quick bam! Save bam!" Apart from the first demon, none of the other demons had a chance to say a complete sentence. This island's military power setup was rather powerful. They had 2 9th-tier demons and a 10-person garrison made up of 7th-tier demons. Hence, they could see how much Simmons favored his lover. However, such power was insignificant in front of Irina's Mjolnir. None of them made it to the second strike. In 3 short minutes, there was already a bloodbath surrounding the crystal castle, and the scent of blood filled the air. Mag stared at Irina, speechless. The clean and fast technique, meaningful killing sequence, and some big random craters in the ground made the demons look as if they had died in a horrible stampede incident. And only the Abyss Demons' porcupine battle boars were capable of creating a stampede incident of this scale. She was indeed a professional at framing others. She should be hiding in this crystal castle. Mag looked up at the castle that was made up of all kinds of different crystals. Under the moonlight, it gave out a dreamy dazzling glow, just like a scene in the dreams. It should be what women loved the most. Simmons really went all out to please this lover of his. What a pretty castle! Amy's eyes lit up. "Little I, as an assassin without feelings, you cannot be affected by external factors when you are carrying out your mission. In our eyes, it should be no different from normal rocks." Irina lowered her head to talk to Amy. Then, she swung her hammer and smashed it against the crystal castle. Accompanied by the sounds of crystals shattering, the dreamy crystal castle collapsed. Chunks of dazzling natural crystals fell on the ground and shattered into pieces. 2 figures who were only covered in bedsheets rolled out from the castle, and stared at Mag and Irina fearfully. They were dressed in black and wearing a black mask, so nobody could see who they were on this dark night. Their guards were obviously killed during the earlier sounds of dull thuds and screams. "WW, who are you people? What do you want to do?" Charlene asked nervously. She stood on the crystal shards with her bare feet, and they were already bleeding. Although she was exceptional at mesmerizing men, when it came to fighting, she was only a third-tier demon who didn't know any magic or combat skills. Mag looked at Charlene. Although she was only wearing a bedsheet, the fair and slender legs, the sexy collarbones, and the seductive face all could mesmerize men. What was even weirder was her face seemed to be constantly changing. It was changing in a very minute and natural way, which allowed others to see a new face constantly in a very natural manner. That frowning expression even made one feel sorry for her, compelling one to carry her out from the crystal shards. So this is the imp mother demon's natural talent? No wonder they're a race on par with the succubus, though much rarer. Mag pondered. Apart from surprising him, she didn't have much effect on him. Meanwhile, the young demoness standing behind Charlene was holding a blue leaf with her hand that was on the side of her body. A cold gleam flashed through her eyes, and she raised her hand up, preparing to release it. "Take this." Right at that moment, a melodious voice sounded behind the two demonesses. A big magic caster's staff knocked the two demonesses' heads hard, and the two of them were knocked out on the ground even before they could make a sound. Amy looked at the two fainted demonesses, and seriously said, "The assassin is super fierce." This style of sneak attack was inherited perfectly. He could only praise her with resignation. "Well done, You have some of my grace." Irina nodded with satisfaction. She used the holy light to cover the bodies who dropped their bedsheets before walking forward to grab the two demonesses out of the shattered crystals as if she was grabbing dead chickens. She tossed them onto the sand at the side, encased them in a layer of sand, and then said to Mag, "What now? Bring them away with us, or bury them on the spot. They're worthless if they're dead." "Let's bring them back and lock them up," Mag said smilingly. He broke a branch off, and wrote a bunch of words on the sandy beach with a messy handwriting before tossing the branch into the sea. It disappeared completely after the waves took it away. "Let's go. I have already set up a time and location with him. It's that island where the stone statue was found." Mag wiped away all their footprints and suspicious traces, and at the same time added some traces and details of the Abyss Demon's presence. Then, the trio went back to where Ozzy was, and quickly left the island. After they got back to Carapace Island, Mag locked the two demonesses into a black hut on the balcony. They still hadn't regained their consciousness, as Amy had struck them really hard, but they were not in any mortal danger, either. The two of them looked like a tumbler after Irina coated them with the sand, so they were not worried that they could escape from the black hut at all. "Are you sure that Simmons will come? Then, how do you inform Alfred?" "I'm not confident that I could kill the two of them if they joined forces," Irina told Mag perplexedly as she watched him close the door. "Simmons has an explosive temper, and he dotes on this demoness very much. His mistress' hideout was thrashed, all his trusted subordinates were slaughtered, and his beautiful mistress was abducted. He isn't someone who would let this go. I have also prepared something for Alfred. Follow me." Mag brought Irina downstairs, and went into the study. He swiftly came out with a black wood carving, and passed it to Irina. "Is this that stone statue?" Irina stared at the rough wood carving in her hand in an astonishment. She could see the general outline of the stone statue. "This is my first time making a wood carving, so I'm not very good at it," Mag explained awkwardly. He could have done a better job if he'd changed it into a carrot. "I've planned to use this to make Alfred go to the stone statue's island. It's more remote, and has an equal distance to Flaming Island and Abyss Island, so it would make a great ambush location. However, if they have a conversation after they meet up, this plan is going to look shoddy," Irina continued. "I believe they won't be having a conversation." Mag smiled and shook his head as he passed a piece of paper to Irina. Irina read it seriously, and then her eyes lit up. Feeling slightly surprised, she said, "This could work. I didn't know that you could plot now." "Brave but not astute isn't a good description." Mag shrugged. This was a very simple method of sowing discord. However, it wouldn't be that simple if they didn't have Irina's powerful potential as the support. Mag let Amy burn half of the wood carving with flames before using the burned wood to write a line of words on a rock, and then tying the two together. He went to Abyss Island on Ozii alone, and tossed the wood carving into the Great Hall in the center of the abyss accurately from the sky above. If the information was correct, that Great Hall should belong to Alfred. The griffin soon disappeared from the sky above Abyss Island. The stone statue that was tied to a burning red meteor crashed through the roof of the Great Hall suddenly, and shattered the silence on Abyss Island. Simmons, you have gone too far. Alfred stood in the middle of the hall, and crushed the stone and wood carving in his hand as he looked at the broken roof and snarled. His red eyes were flashing with a murderous look. Anyone who tried to get their hands on the stone statue's power deserved to die. Alfred, F***CKU. On an island, Simmons, who was burning in flames, roared into the sky, and the flames that gushed out melted all surrounding crystals. He was only 30 minutes later than usual because he had to satisfy his wife at home first. He didn't expect the island to end up in a bloodbath and Charlene to disappear. On the Demon Islands, only the porcupine battle boars could leave footprints like this, and it had to be Alfred's porcupine battle boar, as only it could have overcome the 9th tier flaming demons. Simmons, let me play with this woman for 2 days. You can collect her back at West Point Island 2 days later. I'll be waiting for you there. Glaring at the words on the sand, Simmons almost could imagine Alfred's ugly face. That damned bastard! How dare he kill his subordinates and steal his woman? Damned bastard, you're just afraid that I will steal your position of the Marshal of the Allied Forces. We will see which one of us is going to die in the hands of the other, Simmons said with clenched teeth before leaping onto a giant black beast. The rest of the island descended into flames, and they were all reduced to ashes together with the crystal castle. The morning sun shone through the gaps in the curtains, and landed on Jane's face. Jane frowned a little before opening her eyes suddenly. She sat up on the bed at the same time, and reached out to grab the stone on the bedside table. However, she didn't get the stone this time, as there was only a small alarm clock that was moving around. Jane was taken aback for a minute as she stared at the room's decor. She finally regained her wits, and realized she was no longer living in a cave on the cliff. Instead, she was staying in a safe and comfortable room, and sleeping on a big soft bed. It was just that what happened yesterday was so fantastical that it resembled an unrealistic dream. She reached out to pinch herself on her thigh, and the pain woke her up completely. So that wasn't a dream. That was a comfortable rest. Jane put her hands and stretched. She felt all the tiredness had left her body after her sleep, unlike sleeping on rocks where she would wake up aching all over. Oh, yes. I should get up to work. Jane swiftly got out of bed, and folded the blanket neatly before going out. Jane, why did you wake up so early? There is no service in the morning, and you can sleep in, Mag, who just came out after washing up, said to Jane with a smile. It was only 6 in the morning. He was used to getting up early in the morning, so his body clock woke him up, but Jane had nothing to do even when she woke up so early. I had enough sleep, and I have never had such a good sleep. Jane shook her head, and asked Mag, Boss, is there anything you need me to do? For example, like washing clothes. I can do anything. Mag was thoughtful. The racial war was catastrophic to every species. Once it started, no species was going to emerge as the winner. Then, what kind of natural racial talents do you have? Such as magic or some kind of mutation? Mag continued to ask. Jane was too weak, and it wasn't easy for her to survive on this chaotic carapace island without a skill. Mother had never taught me before. I don't know magic or how to mutate. Jane shook her head. Unicorn demons are rare light-type demons. They were annihilated then because they released too much healing holy light on the battlefields, which antagonized everyone. Therefore, there was a saying then, we can lose the group battle, but the unicorns have to die. And before the war was over, the unicorn demons were almost all dead. Irina had got up too, and she was smiling and leaning against the wall. Healing holy light. Jane's eyes lit up. Even though she didn't understand what Irina meant by group battle, she was sure that unicorn demon's magic should be useful. Light-type demon. Mag's eyes lit up too. Ever since Irina used the holy light to cleanse the black fog easily, he had been trying to replicate it, but light-type magic casters were extremely rare, and he had only seen Irina up till now. He hadn't expected Jane to be a natural light-type demon. Goldie Horn, you're not without a natural talent. It's just that this golden horn has not been consecrated yet. Irina approached and tapped on Jane's champagne golden horn lightly. A ray of holy light lit up at the tip of her finger, and then pierced into the golden horn like a needle. Crack! A sound of mud casing shattering appeared, and a thin layer of shell fell off the golden horn. There was a gleam in the golden horn, as if it was lit up. It was emitting a bright golden light. Mag was amazed by Irina's consecration method as he witnessed that scene. That was a real consecration. Jane was rooted to the ground as she stared upward at the horn that was emitting a golden light. There was a warm sensation on her forehead, and a strange power started to spread out within her body as if it was changing it. Why was her horn suddenly glowing? What was that mysterious power? Approximately 3 minutes later, the golden beam went away completely, and Jane's horn became a semi-transparent golden horn that resembled a crystal artwork which looked so much more sophisticated than it was before. Goldie Horn, seems like your bloodline is rather pure. Your talent should be quite good. Irina came over and observed Jane's golden horn for a while seriously before nodding with satisfaction. Since this is the case, you will learn holy light technique from me. Jane's face lit up before she hesitated again. See, could I really do that? She was always the target of bullying and teasing ever since she was young. She didn't have the power to protect herself or her mother, and could only hide in perilous caves on cliffs like a downtrodden dog. And now, the lady boss actually wanted to teach her holy light technique. Although she had no idea what that was, it was still tremendously precious to her. Since we have nothing to do in the morning, I will start teaching you after breakfast, Irina said relaxedly before going into the bathroom, and began to brush her teeth and wash up. I will go make breakfast. Mag smiled and went downstairs. Since Irina was going to teach Jane holy light technique, he didn't have to worry anymore. After all, Jane didn't look like she was going to be great in learning sword fighting skills. After she learned about holy light, the least she could do was to work in an anime company and apply high-class mosaic over their work. After breakfast was over, Irina brought Jane up to the balcony to learn holy light technique. Amy said she wanted to learn, so she went up with them too. Mag left the house and bumped into the family of rock trolls going out with wooden buckets. He smiled, and greeted, "Good morning. Are you all going to the beach?" "Yes, Boss Hades." "You're collecting crayfish, right?" "So, we're going to catch some too. We can exchange 2 living ones for a cooked one." "It's better than working at the quarry," Yvonne replied with a smile. This was the outcome of their family meeting last night. "Then I hope that your bucket will overflow with crayfish." Mag smiled. He didn't expect Yvonne and his family would join in the activities of catching the crayfish. Seemed like the craze for catching the crayfish had just begun. At 8 a.m., a long line began to form outside the restaurant's door again, and the number of fishermen was double of yesterday's. Many of them were amateur fishermen with mud all over their faces who obviously had just joined in the catching craze. And those experienced fishermen had buckets and nets full of crayfish and confident smiles on their faces as they sneered at those newbies who had only caught 1 or 2 crayfish. The long line attracted the curiosity of many demons who walked by. When they heard catching the same crayfish would earn them 50 copper coins each at this crayfish restaurant, many of them rushed to the beach with the fear of missing out. Mag bought all the crayfish that the fishermen brought there at 50 copper coins each, being true to his word. The fishermen counted the money they received happily with satisfied smiles on their faces. Kitar put the money in his pocket carefully, and then expectantly asked Mag, "Boss, do you sell crayfish in the morning?" "I only sell them in the noon and evening. It's too heavy to eat crayfish in the morning." Mag shook his head with a smile. "Oh, I see. Then I can only come back to eat it tonight," Kitar said regrettably. He had caught another 40-odd crayfish last night, and earned over 2,000 copper coins. Both him and his wallet were rather full. Furthermore, the crayfish that this boss made was really very delicious. He had never eaten such delicious food before, and it had subverted everything he knew about food. They were only supposed to fill the stomach, but they tasted so marvelous after being processed by his hands. Mag placed all the crayfish that he had collected into the pond, and washed them with fast-running water a few times before filling the pond up with clean water. He tossed 2 broken swords in to make them spit out the dirt. This morning, he had collected 1,523 crayfish, and the mission progress had changed to 8/100. System: shouldn't the mission be considered a success after I made the demons on Demon Islands fall in love with eating crayfish? I have set up a natural enemy for them, so even if they breed and multiply, they won't be creating any problems. Most probably, they wouldn't even be enough for them to eat, Mag said in his heart. Chapter 1341. Do you have any objections? However, system, you should at least give me a judging criteria, right? Mamie Restaurant is operating in a semi-closed condition now, and I have to sell this cheap crayfish out here every day. It isn't just me who isn't earning money, you're not earning money, either. After we return to Chaos City, we could sell this crayfish for 500 copper coins each. Not only I will be earning money, you will be too. Let's all earn money together. This sounds rather reasonable. You see, the crayfish in the farms are getting bigger every day, and they're ready to be sold now. But they couldn't be sold due to those crayfish that had escaped. Don't you feel aggrieved? Mag continued on. I feel miserable and I wanna cry. It's normal that you wanna cry. Alright, let's take the crayfish rearing base as the center point and the surrounding 300 nautical miles of water areas as the interregional. The crayfish are not fast-moving animals, so I guess that they could not have gone too far. According to the crayfish's habits and characteristics and underwater ocean currents, they should still be within the area of 100 nautical miles in 4 days' time. If the host could make the island's inhabitants within the 300 nautical miles area fall in love with eating crayfish within 7 days, and caught half of the reproductive crayfish, the mission would be considered a success. The outcome of the mission being reduced by half allowed Mag heaved a sigh of relief. Mag didn't think they could have caught all 100 reproductive crayfish even if every inhabitant on Carapace Island joined in the craze of catching them. The crayfish that had escaped from the crayfish rearing base could have gone ashore on any of the neighboring islands, or simply lived under the sea. Carapace Island had stopped some of them, but they were simply a small portion of the 300,000 crayfish. It was unknown whether he could gather 50 of them. Reproductive crayfish. Mag scooped out a crayfish that had a red belly from the pond. This was the reproductive crayfish that the system hadn't sterilized. Its traits were very obvious when it was compared to the completely blackish-green crayfish. It was bigger than normal crayfish, and could reach about 1.5 kilograms. Oh, yes. Apart from the crayfish that came onto the island, regarding those under the sea, maybe I could go recruit some underwater fishermen to catch all the crayfish that are hiding in the sea. Mag's eyes lit up. He already had an idea. Miss, when is Boss Mag coming back? Take a look, a few more spots have appeared on my nose when I woke up this morning. They're not going to go away until I have Boss Mag's tofu pudding. Yes, yes. Look at my skin, it's so dry and no longer smooth. I really need Boss Mag's tender, loving care very much. I am going to hang myself right here at the restaurant's door if Boss Mag is not coming back soon. And my eyes will remain open even after I am dead. A group of crazy women had blocked the entrance of Mamie restaurant. They were complaining about the horrible effects of not being able to eat tofu pudding. They were crying and howling as if they had been just robbed of $1 million. I want to eat grilled fish. A rather different voice came from the crowd. All the women fell into a silence for a moment before they turned around at the same time to look at Harrison, who was standing at the outer part of the crowd, and said together, "Scram! Scary women!" Harrison was startled, and he slowly backed off before he turned and took off. "I'm sorry. We, too, are not sure when the boss will come back. He will definitely make the tofu pudding for all of you immediately when he comes back. Please wait for his return patiently," Yabimiya said apologetically. She was really worried that this group of crazy women would hang themselves at the door or simply tear down the restaurant. All the women's faces fell in disappointment when they heard that. However, they left when they saw that Mag indeed wasn't in the restaurant. "It's so scary. These women will come to ask a few times every day, as if they're going to tear down the restaurant," Yabimiya said to Elizabeth, who was sitting down and drinking her tea calmly as she patted her bosom. Elizabeth took a sip as she coldly said, "Don't worry. They're dead if they dare to act on it. This isn't very good. They're customers, after all," Yabimiya said softly. "They will be enemies if they're going to tear down the restaurant. We have to be as cold and harsh toward our enemies as a harsh winter," Elizabeth said calmly. "I wonder when boss will come back? They've already been gone for 2 days. It's longer than what he usually did, and big sister Camilla has left too." Yabimiya quickly sighed and changed the topic. "I heard there is a new restaurant on the island that is rather good. Its patrons are even lining up. Should we go dine and dash for lunch?" "Sure. If it really tastes good, we will eat there for a whole month. After all, these demons don't dare to resist us. Wait for me. How could I miss out on dine and dash?" 4 demons walked out of Ten Kings Palace, and all the demons who bumped into them avoided them like a plague. Those who couldn't get out of their way in time were kicked by them. Those who were lucky only had their bones broken and vomited blood. Those who weren't could knock onto something and die on the spot. "Is this the one?" that abyss demon said as he looked at the crayfish restaurant in front, feeling rather surprised. "Yes, this is the crayfish restaurant. I heard it is rather good. What's going on? You guys came here before?" The Shivara who suggested it nodded. "A demon was beaten to death here yesterday noon, so we made a trip here. This boss is rather stubborn. This dine and dash is not going to be easy." The abyss demon nodded. "Stubborn? Ha! How dare a lowly demon show defiance to us, the Ten Kings Palace? Isn't he seeking death? Don't worry, follow me. I'll thrash his restaurant if he won't let us eat for free," the Shivara said disdainfully, and began to stride to the crayfish restaurant. The abyss demon and the spatial demon looked at each other and smiled cunningly. They quickly caught up with him too. The crayfish restaurant's yard was already filled up with demons. The crayfish were frying in the iron wok and emitting a tantalizing aroma. What was different from yesterday was that the wok on the rightmost wasn't filled with spicy crayfish, it was filled with garlic crayfish instead. It was the new item that the boss was introducing today. Its aroma whiffed through the air, and all the demons were staring at it with their necks outstretched. "Get off! This table is ours now." Right at this moment, the 4 demons from Ten Kings Palace came in, and the Shivara kicked and overturned the table that was closest to the yard's gates. He put his foot on a chair and stared at the 4 demons who were lying on the ground clenching their chests with a smirk. "Do you have any objections?" Chapter 1342 I heard someone slaughtered your ancestor. The originally boisterous courtyard fell into a deathly silence. All the demons lowered their heads and averted their gazes, worried that the trouble might come to them. There were already some demons who had sneaked away secretly. It was too unsafe to sit with the fellows from Ten Kings Palace. "I have an objection," a cold female voice commented. The Shivara looked up and faced a circular stool surface directly. The stool's surface collided with the face that was full of pockmarks. The wooden chair started to shatter, and that face swiftly changed shape. The face's shape was altered, the nose was flattened, and the teeth were shattered. During that instant, numerous micro-expressions flashed across the Shivara's face. Astonishment, disdain, shock, and pain. Bam! The wooden chair shattered into wooden chips which flew all over, and that Shivara who had his foot on the chest of the demon who was clutching his chest on the ground spiraled and flew backwards. He was pinned onto a huge tree that was 100 meters away. Only his fingers were still trembling. The 3 Ten Kings Palace demons turned their heads to look at the Shivara that was hanging on the tree, and then looked at Irina who was tossing up the chair's leg in her hand with a relaxed expression. They all took a leap backwards simultaneously with fear in their eyes. Terrifying. The customers who lowered their heads finally lifted their heads up to look at the beautiful lady boss who was holding a chair's leg and that Shivara who was sent flying by a stool. That was a 6th-tier Shivara and a staff member of the Ten Kings Palace, but the lady boss still sent him flying. It seemed like that rumor about killing a customer as an offering was most likely true. After all, if this lady boss dared to smack the people from Ten Kings Palace, they wouldn't be surprised with anything else that the lady boss tried to attempt. The demon that was being stepped on suddenly felt that things were bright again, and then he went into a stupor. A Shivara was smacked and sent flying on Carapace Island. That was simply too crazy. Mag looked at the Shivara hanging on the tree, and used his hand to block Amy's magic staff. Although it was boisterous to offer a customer to the heavens, it wasn't good to do this every day. After all, they still needed to stay on Carapace Island for a few more days, so it was not good to strain their relationship with Ten Kings Palace. Anyway, revenge was a dish best served cold. How dare you hurt the people from Ten Kings Palace? Are you trying to go against us, Ten Kings Palace? Or you're trying to challenge our top 10 demon tribes? That spatial demon warned severely. This demoness power was way above theirs, and she didn't care about any rules when she reacted. Irina curled her lips, and sarcastically said to that spatial demon, "I'm just trying to clear the rubbish that was making trouble. Isn't that the rule set by your Ten Kings Palace? People who don't obey the rules usually die a horrible death. I heard someone slaughtered your ancestor? What a pity. He didn't even leave behind any teachings for you. What a disgrace to your family. Why you?" The spatial demon's face went dark with anger. The murder of spatial demon patriarch had a huge impact on the spatial demon tribe. It caused their ranking in the top 10 demon tribes to fall from the 6th straight to the 10th, and could be taken over by any of the other tribes any time. He didn't expect this demoness to say it out loud in the open and jeer at him. This was intolerable. Do you know what price you will pay for going against Ten Kings Palace on Carapace Island? Not only will you lose the shop, your whole family is going to pay a horrible price, the Abyss Demon warned in a severe voice as he glared at Irina coldly. They always had their way on Carapace Island. They had never felt so aggrieved before. One of them was even sent flying to the tree. Bam! Irina suddenly took out a chair from nowhere, and then sent that Abyss Demon flying as well. I don't want to talk to a fat pig from the Abyss. I could even smell the stench of pigs on him when he talks. Irina kept the chair. This chair was obviously of a better quality than the previous one. The bottom of the chair was still there. What else do you two want to say? Irina asked the 2 remaining demons coldly. Intrepid. All the demon customers were staring. At that instant, they were even a little dazed. Weren't these 4 demons the notorious staff members of Ten Kings Palace who terrorized Carapace Island? Why did they resemble 4 pitiful little demons, while that lady boss looked like the real bully? The 2 demons gulped at the same time. This demoness was completely lawless, and what made them miserable was that they were not her match. Let's go back to get help. The 2 demons exchanged glances, and confirmed that they were not her match. Hence, Both demons shook their heads at the same time. Then you two can go now. Irina raised her hand and smacked the remaining 2 demons with a stool each, sending them flying. The 4 Ten Kings Palace's demons helped one another and struggled away. Such a scene had never been seen on Carapace Island before. A resounding applause sounded in the courtyard and the streets for a long time. All the demons were looking at Irina with a gaze of admiration and respect. However, they felt a little sad that this crayfish restaurant was going to disappear after just 2 days of operation. Great! Seems like I got to move to another location to continue my crayfish enterprise now. Mag sighed. He didn't think that Irina was wrong. However, Ten Kings Palace ruled the place, and it would be troublesome if they didn't finish them off. Continue to have your meal. Irina raised her hand, and a pale green beam of light sunk into the chest of that demon who was lying on the ground. His sunken chest cavity quickly rose up, and his broken bones were reconnected. The sensation of pain went away instantaneously. The demon got up from the ground, and expressed his gratitude to Irina, but he didn't sit down again. Instead, he got the other 3 demons who were sitting at the table to leave with him quickly. Irina approached Mag, and gently said to him, "I'm going out for a while." "Where are you going?" "To kill a few people and get something." Irina walked past him, and went into the restaurant before going upstairs. Mag glanced at those 4 demons who were still visible at the corner of the street with a piteous look. Why did they have to do that? Why couldn't they be quiet chowhounds? Apart from having peace and quiet, they would also get to enjoy the delicious crayfish. How nice would that be? Why did they have to ask for it? After a short while, a thunderous sound came from the center of Carapace Island, and a giant black mushroom cloud rose up at the area where Ten Kings Palace was located. The entire island shook along with it. What is that? All the demons on Carapace Island looked in the direction of Ten Kings Palace with a shocked expression. The Ten Kings Palace seemed to be under attack. "It's all settled," Irina said softly as she came out from the restaurant. The time that she took was almost as if she had just made a trip to the toilet. Chapter 1343 New Employee. The gold vault in Ten Kings Palace was emptied out completely, and all the past year's protection money was taken. The loss was over 300 million copper coins. Apart from Ten Kings Palace getting attacked 5 years ago, and having 10 of its halls blown up at the same time, there hadn't been such a crazy occurrence on Carapace Island for a long time. Ten Kings Palace had called that devastating robbery then a natural disaster, and had forbidden the residents on Carapace Island to discuss it ever again. They hadn't expected a similar incident to happen again today, and they even lost the money. Obviously, Ten Kings Palace couldn't use the excuse of natural disaster again this time. The demons on Carapace Island felt more angry with Ten Kings Palace rather than appreciative. Hence, the crayfish restaurant's beer sales increased instantly after the news got out. Furthermore, after such a huge incident, the Ten Kings Palace would be too busy with their own matters. They wouldn't have the time to find trouble with the crayfish restaurant for a while. Their beautiful days of eating crayfish and drinking chilled beer should be able to continue for a while more. Mag's eyes twitched when he heard the demons' gossips. He hadn't expected Irina to commit such a great deed when she only left for a short period of time. He couldn't help but softly ask, "Is there really 300,000,000?" Poverty has restricted their imagination. Irina shook her head and showed him 5 fingers. Mag cocked his eyebrows, feeling rather speechless. She had earned 500 million in just a short while. Why was he still selling crayfish with her earning power? He should just go straight home and lie down as her pretty boy. He would just need to move his lower body, and he would be well taken care of. It is more than the previous time. After harvesting them now, we gotta let them grow again for the next few years, Irina said regrettably. It's fine. They will grow back again. They are good crops, Mag consoled her. At the same time, he felt sorry for Ten Kings Palace in his heart for 1 second. The 4 demons who came today had caused the harvesting to take place earlier. Although they would be harvesting them sooner or later, Irina harvesting them now had indeed resolved the issue of 10 King's Palace coming to find trouble with them. Even if the top 10 tribes sent people here to investigate, they would never guess that the main culprit was on Carapace Island, and was even operating a crayfish restaurant. The garlic crayfish that was released at noon had gained the customers' favor too. Especially those customers who couldn't take the spicy crayfish's spiciness had seen the garlic crayfish as the savior of their tongues. It was the most blissful thing to be able to receive the flavor happily when they were enjoying the delicacy. This woman is simply too mesmerizing. A strong power, a character that acts up whenever there's a conflict, and the charm she exudes when she smacks the chair down. It's an absolutely irresistible lethal attack. Angela, who was sitting in the corner, stared at Irina with a gleam in her bright eyes. Her legs were slightly apart, and she couldn't help grabbing her skirt. She couldn't close her legs. Irina seemed to sense something, and slowly turned toward Angela. Oh no, she's discovered me. Angela was shocked. She quickly lowered her head and grabbed a pincer to suck on the minced garlic seriously, but her slightly blushed face still exposed her. Ah, she's here again. An amused expression appeared on Irina's lips. Did this rare 8th-tier succubus really like to eat crayfish? Or, she wanted to eat her husband? Or, she wanted to eat both of them? Irina walked over to Angela as she thought of that. Angela lowered her head and crushed the pincer before peeling away the shell seriously. Then, she dipped the meat into the garlic sauce and took a big bite. Mmm. The garlic's aroma blossomed immediately. It wasn't as provoking as the spicy crayfish, but the scrumptiousness wasn't any less. The gentle texture had a surprising explosive force. The aroma stirred up the taste buds on the tip of the tongue instantly. The supple crayfish meat had an amazing bounciness. Once she chewed on it, the fresh and flavorful crayfish meat together with the abundant garlic was so blissful that it made her feel like crying. This is simply too divine. Angela couldn't help praising it. Although they were 2 completely different crayfish's flavors, their scrumptiousness were equally amazing. Angela put down the pincer that she had finished chewing. She only discovered that Irina had come to her table and was smiling at her when she tilted her head up. Is it nice? Irina asked smilingly. And nice. Angela nodded nervously. Her heart felt unsettled, yet it throbbed at the same time. Maybe she has already discovered that I was watching her? Why is she approaching me deliberately? Maybe, she's interested in me too? A series of questions flashed across Angela's heart, and she began to look at Irina with an unfocused gaze. The crayfish restaurant needs an employee. If you are interested, you could come and try it out. It's a short-term job, Irina said to Angela, who was zoning out with an unfocused gaze. Hey? You're asking me to join the crayfish restaurant? Angela was stunned. She tossed all the crazy thoughts aside, and stared at Irina with a shocked expression. Her brain was in a daze. Yes. Irina nodded. Could it be, she is interested in me? She wants to get me close to her before. Angela didn't dare to think about what was going to happen next. She nodded without any hesitation. I do. Ha! She indeed is a woman who is ready to throw herself at the man any time. Irina smirked with disdain. She wanted to see for herself what prowess this 8th-tier succubus had, and if she could steal her man away from her. She calmly said, then stay after you are done eating. Angela nodded. After some thought, she added, apart from the meal's time, I should be free to do my own things, right? Although she was thrilled, she had a mission to complete on her current trip to Carapace Island. Hiding her identity behind the facade of the crayfish restaurant's employee seemed like a good idea. However, she had to have her own free time. Yes. You are free to do whatever you like for the rest of the time. Irina nodded. All right, I think I am going to like this job. Angela revealed an amorous smile. and Irina had already turned and left. I'm going to marry this darned woman sooner or later. Angela stared at Irina's back. As an existence that accepted both men and women, the more difficult the target was, the more she wanted to conquer him or her. After the lunch service was over, Mag looked at Angela, and then hesitantly asked Irina, "New employee. How do you do?" "I'm Angela," Angela said with a smile, and she winked at Mag habitually. However, after she was sure that Eyes of Enchantment had no effect on Mag, she didn't bother to try that on Mag again. Moreover, it wasn't him she was interested in. Chapter 1344 Stalking. Mag wasn't discriminating against her race, and being succubus didn't mean that she was a bad woman. However, this unusually powerful succubus was obviously no pushover. He didn't know what could happen if she gave every customer an Eyes of Enchantment. Moreover, this could potentially change the ambience in the restaurant. The customers wouldn't be able to concentrate on enjoying the food. They might not have come for the crayfish. Instead, they could have come to see this succubus. This was going to be a problem. It's just a short-term job. I think she's rather suitable if she's interested. What do you think? Irina asked Mag when she saw that he was a little hesitant. All right then. Mag pondered for a moment. He agreed that Irina was right. It was just a short-term job that only lasted for 10 days. They simply needed an extra pair of hands, so who cared what kind of demon she was? Moreover, if this crayfish couldn't make the customers get rid of all other thoughts and concentrate on eating it, it couldn't be considered as the best crayfish. He still had that little bit of confidence. How do you do? I'm Hades. You may call me boss. Mag nodded at Angela before saying, I wonder if Miss Angela could do the job of clearing the plates and cleaning the tables. What is so difficult about clearing plates? I just have to put them aside, Angela said with an easy-peasy expression as she rolled her eyes at Mag. How dared this man look down on her? It was rare to see a succubus as outstanding as her. If it wasn't because of this beautiful big sister, she wouldn't want to be a service staff in this restaurant. Then, may I bother you to clear all plates on the rest of the tables, and then wipe all the tables and chairs once? This will be your job for this afternoon. Mag smiled. And now? Angela was slightly taken aback. She didn't expect to be assigned a task so soon. Yes. Mag nodded. Jane is responsible for ordering and serving, while you're responsible for clearing and cleaning. I think you should be able to do it very well. Angela raised her hand with a relaxed smile, and said, Of course, such an easy matter wouldn't be a challenge to me. After saying that, she walked straight to the nearest table, and stacked all the dishes onto another on a tray until they looked like a messy little mountain. The moment she lifted the tray, the pile of dishes crashed down and fell off the tray. I catch. I catch. I bite. I catch. Crash. All the dishes were shattered. Mag looked at the innocent-looking Angela, who was biting onto one plate, grasping a plate with each hand and catching one plate with her right foot, and raised his eyebrows. He had a bad feeling. Irina and Amy were overcome with laughter right there and then. Jane looked at Angela worriedly, and then felt a little heartache for the broken dishes on the floor. Such good dishes were simply shattered like this. She had already reminded this big sister that she couldn't stack up the dishes like that. This is an accident, Angela said awkwardly as she slowly retrieved her leg, and placed that bowl which was on her toes on the floor. She didn't expect her lies that she'd just told would be exposed by herself the very next second. This kind of pain, most likely nobody could have imagined. I think these bowls fell onto the floor by themselves, Irina said with a smile. Angela looked at Irina gratefully. She didn't expect she would use such a lousy excuse to help her out at such a time. She indeed wasn't wrong about her. I think so too. These bowls are really too naughty. Mag nodded before saying to Jane, Jane, I think you should teach Angela how to clear the dishes. All right. Jane nodded. She swept away the stone shards on the floor first before teaching Angela how to stack the dishes from the biggest so they would not fall, and how to clean the dining tables. I didn't expect it to be so troublesome just to clear a table. After clearing all the dining tables with Jane, Angela heaved a long breath of relief. This was more tiring than mesmerizing 100 men. It's okay, big sister Angela. You've learned very fast. I believe you will get the hang of it very soon, Jane encouraged her with a smile. Of course. Angela smiled confidently as she looked at Jane's gleaming golden horn. Jane, your golden horn is so pretty. I've never seen such a pretty horn before. Thank you. Jane blushed. Nobody had praised her for being pretty before. My job for the noon service is done, so I'm going off now. I'll be back for the dinner service. Angela bade her farewell, and left the crayfish restaurant. Mag and the rest went back into the restaurant too. You seem to be rather wary of her. Irina asked after taking a sip of water from a glass. An 8th-tier succubus with an unknown background, and who is obviously not a native of Carapace Island. I'm afraid she could implicate us if she went seeking trouble. For example, emptying the 10 Kings Palace's gold vault and then bombing the 5 halls. Irina asked with a smile. Mag was speechless. In this case, it should be Angela who should be afraid of getting implicated. Actually, I am also very curious about her identity and why she came to Carapace Island. Irina put down her cup. Therefore, I decided not to take a nap. I am going to see for myself what kind of person she is. Stalking. Mag raised his eyebrows. This is a very good verb. Irina nodded. Can you bring little I along? Amy found a giant hat out of nowhere, and put it on her head. She pressed the hat lower and covered half of her face. When she lifted her face up, only her little chin could be seen. Of course, let's set off now. Irina held Amy's hand with a smile. A green teleportation portal lit up underneath their feet, and they disappeared in the blink of an eye. Can you bring Mag couldn't even finish his words when only he and Ugly Duckling were left staring at each other in the room. Meow! Ugly Duckling called out to him, and then walked over to rub against his leg with its furry head. All right. We'd better be good and take a nap. Mag sighed. He crouched down and patted Ugly Duckling on its head. What could he do? He was just a house husband without any familial status. I think this is the place. They even prefer bright colors and neon lights in the day. These dirty male animals indeed shouldn't exist in this world. Angela walked into a dark alley, where the short stone huts at both sides with pieces of red cloth hanging from them had weird noises coming from them. Red light spilled out from the corner of the huts. Why you, how much for one time? A drunk demon asked Angela with a stutter when he stumbled out from a house. His eyes lit up immediately when he saw Angela. One technically a gerund, that is a verb functioning as a noun. Whoa, big sister Angela is so suave, Amy said, clapping her hands as she stood on the roof in the alley. It's surprisingly smooth. Irina was surprised too. However, a hint of doubt appeared on her face when she looked at that hut. But what is she doing here? Could she be working here in the day? That's not right, either. If it was work, she wouldn't have to kill that fellow earlier. Then, why did she come here? Irina pondered. A green light flashed under her feet, and she brought Amy into that hut. At the same time, she set up a sound barrier. This was a small single room with only one messy bed. A succubus covered only with a thin blanket was reclining on the bed with her plump and fair thigh exposed. There were fine lines in the corners of her eyes, and a thick makeup could no longer hide the signs of her aging. She was shocked to see Angela come in. Newcomer. That succubus quickly regained her composure, and used an appraising gaze that a senior used to look at her junior. There was a hint of envy in her eyes. What a youthful body and energetic eyes! When she was young, many men had gone crazy every time she threw a glance at them. Unfortunately, the times had gone by, and she, too, was already aging. I'm not a junior who comes to steal your business. I am the only heir of the succubi's royal family, the regnant AB of succubi Angela Ostel. Angela raised her hand up, and a holy white lotus lit up in the center of her palm. It began to turn slowly in the light before blooming. Holy white lotus! That succubus stared at the white lotus in Angela's palm with disbelief. Her body started to tremble as she was reminded of some legends. She rushed off the bed in a panic, and knelt down in front of Angela with her head touching the ground. She humbly and respectfully said, "Esteemed regnant, please forgive my recklessness and disrespect. You have finally descended on us again. Big Sister Angela is a regnant. Then why is she working as a service staff?" Amy was asked with a perplexed look. "I didn't expect the regnant of succubi to appear again. No wonder she could make it to the 8th tier. She has obtained the recognition from the Holy White Lotus." Irina pondered as she recalled the records that she had read about succubi before. The succubi, too, had a magnificent era a long time ago. The name of the regnant of succubi had once shone brightly on the Norland continent. However, the succubus tribe went into a decline after the regnant of succubi died. Their people were scattered all over the continent. Because they had the natural talents at mesmerization, they became the playthings of the rest of the races, and were stuck with the label of promiscuous beings. Perhaps most people had already forgotten, including the succubi themselves, that they once believed in the extremely pure and clean holy white lotus, which grew in the mud but was never tainted by it. "Rise!" Angela kept that white lotus flower, reached up to help that succubus up, and wrapped the bedsheet around her. That succubus still lowered her head because she didn't dare to look at Angela. Her body was trembling because she was agitated. "I came to bring you all away," Angela said to that succubus. That succubus raised her head and stared at Angela with disbelief. So many years had passed, and even the succubi themselves began to lose faith with regard to the holy white lotus legend. They sank and lost themselves into vice. They became the playthings of men, allowing them to release their desires on them in exchange for very little money. They couldn't resist, and they didn't have the power to resist. No matter where they went, the label of cheap and promiscuous followed after them. Hence, they accepted all that as they lay in the huts in this dark alley. However, the succubus with the white lotus in her hand had really appeared. She had come to this dark and dirty alley, and extended her hand to her. She said she was going to bring them away from here. That succubus hesitated for a moment before softly asking, "To where?" She already had enough of drifting and wandering before she came to Carapace Island. She was very afraid to relive that kind of life again. "Perhaps you all have forgotten that we, succubi, had our own domain once. A holy land that was full of white lotuses," Angela said to that succubus softly. "I came to bring all of you home." The succubus was startled. Home, what an unfamiliar term. Tears began to fall from the corner of her eyes, and then it turned to a silent sob. "Close the door and take nothing. Prepare to leave with me any time. Nobody can force you to do anything in the future." Angela patted her shoulder gently before she went out and walked to the next hut. That succubus looked at Angela's back, and swiftly dabbed away her tears. She took out a long dress from the bottom-most of her closet and put it on. The long skirt made of rough fabric was a little ugly, but it blocked all parts that those animals liked. Then, she slammed the doors shut. "This is surprisingly interesting." Irina brought Amy away, but she didn't continue to follow Angela. Instead, she brought Amy back to the restaurant. "The regnant of succubi? Is she a new version?" Mag raised an eyebrow after he heard Irina's description. He could sense that things weren't that simple. Irina continued, "I have once read in books that the regnant of succubi was the best at mental magic attacks. She could kill without form and even control others' behavior. Although the succubi had never ruled over a territory of their own, due to the regnant of succubi's existence, no tribe had ever dared to trifle with them. Seems like she wants to restore the succubi race, and gather her people together again, Mag said thoughtfully. The situation is rather similar to that of the night elves. But it's not going to be an easy feat for her to bring all the succubi away under the Ten Kings Palace's watch. Irina shook her head. After all, she is not me. Although she was a little of a show-off, Mag had to admit that Irina wasn't wrong to say that. Seems like we have indeed recruited a problematic employee. Mag felt his head ache a little. I will give her a hand when it's necessary. Just take it as an employee's benefit, Irina said generously. You really are a very good lady boss. Mag was a little jealous. I agree. I knew I would do very well in this identity. Everything's good, but could you please don't bring Amy to a brothel in the future? Mag said to the smug Irina, feeling rather resigned. Was that something a normal mother would have done? Irina acknowledged nonchalantly. I need to run an errand too. I need to find someone for help, Mag informed Irina before going out. He walked toward the beach. After spending the price of a reproductive crayfish, Mag rented a deep-sea submarine from the system. He found an isolated coast, drove the submarine away from Carapace Island, and dived into the deep sea. A regnant as a noun is obsolete, it's only used as an adjective now. Maybe sovereign or ruler would work. Not sure what the word is in Chinese, so maybe you have better ideas, though. Hi Chris, sovereign would do too. Because the author actually used the word king, smiling face with open mouth and cold sweat. Chapter 1346. This flavor is not bad. Dexter accepted Mag's request readily, and ordered all the Lantistines who could leave Lantis to go catch the reproductive crayfish. Taking the crayfish base as the center point, they began to search for the reproductive crayfish outward. I received Gina's letter yesterday. It happened to mention that Mr. Mag had left the restaurant in search of ingredients. I didn't expect you to come to the sea. Dexter smiled at Mag. The sea has countless ingredients. It's a fantastic place to come looking for inspirations and ingredients, Mag replied with a smile. What could he do? The system ordered him to come here. He simply had no choice but to come. What other ingredients do you need? If it's inconvenient for you, we could be of service for you, Dexter said. To the Lantistines, Mag was like the savior. The mud casings that he created were saving Lantist from the abyss currently. Currently, I only need to catch those escaped reproductive crayfish, and then lock them back into my crayfish's base. Mag shook his head. With Lantist's help, he felt much more confident about completing his mission. After all, the Lantistines were the real ruler of the sea. Crayfish, were just crayfish. He told Dexter his current address and left. He drove his submarine back to Carapace Island after telling the merfolk that they could go ashore to pass them to him after they caught the reproductive crayfish. On his way back, Mag ran into a group of crayfish, so he caught all 500 odd of them with a fishing net. There were even 3 reproductive crayfish among them. I'm rich with this trip. Mag turned around to look at the crayfish in the tank, and suddenly felt the charm of fishing. Since the rental time of 2 hours was not up yet, Mag went sweeping around crazily in the submarine underwater, and caught more than 1,000 crayfish. System, why don't you help me rear these crayfish first? Mag said in his heart on his journey back. I know that I can't take no more, it ain't no lie, I want to see you out that door, baby, bye bye bye. Get lost. You're really F***ing genius, Mag raised his eyebrow. He had no choice, then. He docked the submarine and leaped out of it, carrying the 1,000-odd crayfish with one hand and the 3 reproductive crayfish with the other. Along the way, all the fishermen who were out fishing were staring at Mag's giant net with a shocked expression. A fisherman gulped with wide eyes when he saw Mag walk by, and commented, "This boss is really somebody." Mag sighed in his heart. He also wanted to keep a low profile, but his power wouldn't allow him to. The 10 Kings Palace's gold vault was robbed in bright daylight, and its 5 halls were bombed. They were thoroughly disgraced. Hence, there were 10 Kings Palace's personnel searching for suspects on the streets everywhere. Some demons were even executed on the spot right away. Mag avoided the 10 Kings Palace's lackeys, and returned to the restaurant with the crayfish. He saw Irina and Amy digging a hole in a corner as soon as he entered the yard. "What are you two doing?" Mag put down the crayfish and looked at the two of them in confusion. "There." Amy pouted her lips, indicating to Mag to look behind the fake mountains. Mag poked his head over, and there were 3 demons who were all bundled up and had rags stuffed into their mouths staring back at him in fear. From the epaulets on their shoulders, he could see that they were from 10 Kings Palace. "You were exposed?" Mag asked Irina, who had already dug out a hole that was big enough to bury 3 men, as he turned around. "No. But they wanted to search the restaurant and attempted to touch me and Amy." Irina shook her head. "This hole is so artistically dug." Mag reached out to grab the 3 demons, who were struggling hysterically because of fear, out from the fake mountains and threw them into the hole. They knocked them out with the shovel, and began filling up the hole with soil. Afterward, they stepped on the filled-up hole to make it nice and even. "If I water them, would a nest of demons grow out from it?" Amy asked with anticipation as she poured water onto it with a cup. "Maybe." Mag smiled and nodded. "But, Father, where did you go to catch so many shrimpies?" Amy asked Mag excitedly. She only noticed all the crayfish that Mag carried back now. "The sea." "Then, can I have 2 big shrimpies tonight?" Amy asked expectantly. "Of course, little Amy, you can have as many crayfish as you want." Mag patted Amy's head indulgently before he tossed all the crayfish into the pond. The delicious garlic crayfish was loved by many customers. The customers were already lining up at the restaurant's door before 5 p.m., which was the time for dinner service. The crayfish weren't limited, and they could have as many as they wanted. But the crayfish were all freshly caught by the fishermen, so the service would end whenever the crayfish in the pond were all sold. The demons that had a great appetite could have a whole pot of crayfish in one go. If there were many of these demons, those demons lining up at the back wouldn't even have the chance to eat the crayfish. Hence, many demons chose to come and line up early. However, what made the customers delighted was that the pond in the corner was filled with crayfish today. It seemed like all the customers could get to enjoy a crayfish tonight. 13 Spices Crayfish. It's a new flavor. Try it. Mag came out with a few plates of crayfish. The aroma washed all over them, and the eyes of the 3 ladies sitting at the table widened. "Father is so formidable. You created a new flavor of big shrimpy again," Amy praised as she hugged Mag and gave him a kiss on the cheek when he was putting down the plates. "Father will make you even more shrimpies with different flavors when we get back home." Mag smiled and glowed after he was praised by his little sweetheart. Then I will have 2 big ones." Amy extended 2 fair fingers and bent them like rabbit's ears. "You can have as many as you want." Mag nodded. He couldn't say no to her at all. Jane watched this scene with envy. She couldn't remember her father at all. She only heard from her mother that he had been beaten to death while trying to save them from the other demons. After that, she had never seen many demons who were nice to their children, so she didn't envy others for having a father. But she was a little envious about the sweet and warm feeling when she saw how Boss doted on I. If her father had been still alive, maybe he would have doted on her like that too. This flavor is not bad." Irina picked up the crayfish and peeled off the shell before dipping the meat into the gravy and taking a big bite. Spicy, fresh, fragrant, sweet, tender, crispy. All the exquisite tastes blossomed in her mouth, and made her eyes light up. Nobody knew who was the actual inventor now. However, the godfather of 13 spices who popularized 13 spices, Wang Xiaoyi, deserved to be praised. After all, together with Lao Gan Ma spicy chili sauce, Mao Dagong spicy sauce, and Wang Zhihe fermented bean curd. Wang Shaoyi 13 spices were known as the four giants among condiments. Wang Shaoyi 13 spices was literally known by everyone, and was an indispensable necessity of many housewives. 13 spices melon seeds, 13 spices dried bean curd, 13 spices chicken thighs, 13 spices quail eggs. Everything could be cooked with 13 spices, hence, it cemented its status in the condiments world. The piping hot crayfish was bright red and aromatic. Although it was called 13 spices, after being modified by Wang Shaoyi and upgraded by the system, there were way more than 13 spices in the 13 spice. The spices weren't added for the sake of adding, and they didn't compete with one another. Instead, they complemented one another to create that unique layered exquisite taste of 13 spice crayfish. Mag sucked on the crayfish's head, and it was spicy and aromatic. It was so delicious that he couldn't stop. It's so delish. I like this crayfish's flavor. It would be great if it was spicier, Amy said as she pouted and sucked in air. But I thought it's already very spicy. Jane huffed and puffed with red lips. She couldn't really take the spiciness, but she couldn't stop eating. After eating crayfish for 3 days, Mag specially prepared a steamed sea bass. This was a wild sea bass that was caught on his way back. Mag fed himself a piece of the fish, and its texture was soft and tender. Its taste was even extremely tasty and fresh. It was, without a doubt, an excellent wild-caught fish. Steve, nobody knows seafood better than I. I don't really believe you when you say this is the most scrumptious prawn on the Demon Islands. Could it be better than the king mantis shrimps from Phi Phi Island? A middle-aged demon with a brandy nose and thick blonde hair said to a young demon standing next to him smilingly. As a rare gourmet among the demons, Tony Moody was the columnist for many famous gourmet magazines. He showcased the classic delicacies from all the islands of the Demon Islands archipelago to all the chowhounds on Norland continent. He was famous for writing all sorts of seafood reviews, and was known as the gourmet who knew seafood best. Tony was paying a visit to the nearby Abyss Island as he prepared to write a review about its most famous roast pork trotters to prove he could write about other food besides seafood too. However, he was a little disappointed as the roast pork trotters didn't bring him too many surprises. Although it had the special traits of the Abyss Demon, with the rough roasting techniques, the porcupine battle boar wasn't as nice as he had imagined. Hence, he had no idea what to write for his next gourmet column. As the Abyss Demons were the best among the top 10 demon tribes, the magazine's sales should be good if they used the Abyss Demon's specialty dish as a gimmick. However, apart from the gimmick, how to handle the lackluster taste and the bloody eating method in an artistic manner and yet not overly exaggerating it such that it could disappoint the customers who came after reading about it would require him to spend quite some time overcoming these problems. Abyss Island was not far from Carapace Island, and his good friend was living abroad on Carapace Island, so he came to pay him a visit. Steve insisted on bringing him to eat the so-called most delicious crayfish. This made him a little unconvinced as no one knew seafood better than him. When it came to prawns, the most scrumptious ones had to be the king mantis shrimps on Phi Phi Island. No one knew how to cook prawns better than the Phi Phis on the Demon Islands. As for Carapace Island, it had a very unique status in the Demon Islands culinary world. It was famous for being low-end and messy. Sometimes, some chefs there would become famous, but once they gained some fame, they would be recruited by all the other tribes. They wouldn't choose to remain on Carapace Island. According to Steve, this new restaurant was only just opened 2-3 days ago. Although he wasn't expecting much, it surprised him that a line made up of dozens of people had already formed at the door. This was not common on Carapace Island, which was famous for being chaotic. You will know how it tastes after you try it. However, let me share something with you, please be conscious of your speech and behavior later when we're in the restaurant. Although you're a perfect gentleman, don't show any disrespect to the lady boss and service staff, Steve warned Tony seriously. Oh? Why is it so particular? Tony was a little curious. On the opening day, the lady boss and little boss killed a customer who refused to pay as an offering. Yesterday, the 10 Kings Palace's staff came to make trouble and kicked a customer. Then, all 4 10 Kings Palace members were smacked and sent flying out of the restaurant. Although your tonnage is bigger, you'll still have to behave if you don't want to be sent flying out of the restaurant. All right, I'm scared. Tony nodded with astonishment. A tough person who dared to send people from 10 Kings Palace flying was indeed rare on Carapace Island. The restaurant's door was opened before long, and a young demon walked out. He announced with a hoarse voice and an awkward expression, "The restaurant's operation has begun. Please come in." What kind of demon is he? Tony was sizing up. He had been to almost all the demon islands, and knew a bit about the majority of the demons, but he couldn't recognize what kind of demon this was that had a pair of pincers on his head, which was very weird. I have no idea, either. I guess he belongs to those tribes that were almost annihilated. Steve shook his head. He, too, couldn't recognize what kind of demon that boss was. The yard's gates were open, and the customers streamed in. The seats in the yard were quickly filled up, and the rest of the customers walked into the restaurant, and took up all the seats too. Jane set up a row of foldable tables and chairs along the street swiftly to enable the customers to have their seats. Is it really so attractive that it has reached such a standard within 2 days? Tony couldn't mumble when he saw the 100-odd customers who had taken their seats. I promised that you wouldn't want to write about whatever abyssal roast pork trotters for this month's column after you ate this crayfish. Steve chuckled as he led Tony to sit down at a table near to the center walk. Ah! I have spent 5 days on Abyss Island for the sake of writing this column. Do you have any idea what it's like to spend 5 days in the abyss filled with the stench of pig's urine? There's no way I would give up on such hard-to-come-by information. Tony was flabbergasted. He didn't believe Steve's words at all. Steve wasn't in a rush to refute him. He picked up the standing number card on the table to have a look, and then delightfully asked a busy with his preparations Mag, "Boss, are you introducing a new crayfish's flavor today?" "Yes. Tonight's new item is 13 spice crayfish," Mag answered casually. What is this prawn? Tony watched Mag scoop up a greenish-black big prawn that had a pair of glaring eyes from the big pond. Its big pincers were still waving in the air, and it weighed more than 1 kilogram each, which was more than double the size of the king mantis shrimp on Phi Island. They had never seen such a strange prawn with this color. Even other prawns around its size were green, so why was it black? How is it? Isn't this crayfish big and fleshy? Steve couldn't help but comment smugly after seeing Tony's expression. Compared to Tony, he was an amateur when it came to commenting about food. But this time, he wanted Tony to recognize his taste. The crayfish was going to beat the abyss roast pork trotters that he had suffered for 5 days for. Tony shook his head slightly as he commented, "This prawn's shell is greenish-black, so it has to be very hard and inconvenient to eat. Even if the chef wants to process it, it would definitely hurt the meat in the process. Hence, it isn't a great ingredient dong. Before Tony could finish speaking, crayfish that had their backs opened and deveined were tossed into the metal basin at the side, making a series of crisp sounds. Every sound felt like a slap to Tony's face. Seeing the flash of the cleaver and not being able to see the cleaver itself, the tough shell was already open, but the meat wasn't hurt at all. Tony couldn't help standing up with his mouth open with amazement. These cutting skills were simply incredible. Sit down, sit down. It's only part of normal procedures." Steve pressed the shocked Tony back down into his seat with a smile. "I've to admit that this boss knife skills are very exceptional. However, cutting skills are just the basic skill of a chef. The most crucial factor that decides how the food tastes after it is cooked is the cooking techniques." Tony schooled his expression. The majority of the demon chef's cooking techniques were very rough. It was rare to see such delicate cutting skills, so he had lost control of his expression. 3 big basins of crayfish were quickly processed. Mag picked up a white wine urn at the side and removed the cork. A rich alcohol fragrance dissipated out instantly. He poured a small spoonful of it out, and poured it over the crayfish which were still moving. He then added in a bunch of sliced ginger, and left them aside with a cover on. Many wine lovers couldn't help taking in a few deep breaths of the wine's fragrance. Their eyes lit up as they looked at the wine urn next to Mag's hand. "This is not for sale." Mag shook his head. He had already guessed their thoughts. This is the step of marination to get rid of the fishy smell. Some demon chefs would also use alcohol to get rid of the smell, and it's rather effective, but I can't identify what wine it is. Its fragrance is very special, and it smells rather strong. It should be a liquor. Tony closed his eyes to sense the wine's fragrance, but he still couldn't identify what wine it was. "Excuse me, what crayfish's flavor would you like to order?" Jane came up to ask Tony and Steve. "I will have 1 crayfish for each of the 3 flavors and a big mug of beer," Steve answered before turning the number card over, and pushing it over to Tony. "Take a look at which flavor you would like to have. The menu is so simple." Tony was still wondering why there wasn't a menu in this restaurant earlier. He didn't expect that the menu was already simplified and printed on the number card. Furthermore, there were only 3 crayfish's flavors and an alcohol drink called beer available for orders. He said to Jane, "I want 1 of everything on the menu." "All right, please wait a minute." Jane nodded and proceeded to the next table. "I didn't expect the service standard on Carapace Island has already risen to such a standard, and the uniform style is very special too," Tony said in surprise as he looked at Jane's back. During his last visit, the demon servers were all yelling while providing their services, and that gave him a very bad impression. Unfortunately, only this restaurant has improved after 3 years. Steve shrugged. "Oh. There's even a beautiful succubus lady." Tony's gaze landed on Angela, who was standing at the restaurant's door. Her exquisite figure and seductive face made it hard for people to remove their gazes from her. They most probably couldn't find another succubus who was as beautiful as her on the entire Demon Islands. Many demons couldn't help appraising her secretly too. The red light district would be bustling if such a beautiful succubus lady were to appear there. Mag also threw a glance at Angela. His greatest challenge that night was to turn the customer's attention from the beautiful succubus lady to the crayfish. He heated up the wok with a big fire before pouring in the cooking oil. Then, he added in all kinds of spices to stir-fry in their respective orders. The 3 stoves were in operation at the same time, and crayfish with 3 different flavors were tossing around in the 3 woks. 13 spice should be a kind of spice, right? This name sounds rather weird, Tony said after he analyzed. The chefs nowadays like to create some gimmicks for their dishes. Nope. 13 spices, simply 13 types of spices. Of course, the spices currently in it have already exceeded that number. Mag shook his head in disagreement. He could sense a familiar feeling from this customer. He should be a food critic like he once had been himself. Tony. He had been shot down. Steve snickered. This was his first time watching Tony suffer a setback. It was indeed right for him to come today. Mag moved in between the 3 woks, and the greenish-black crayfish that were tossing about in the woks had slowly turned red. 3 distinctly different aromas had begun to spread out too. This aroma. I actually can't identify what kinds of spices were added in, but they smell so nice. Tony, who was sitting rather close to the 3 woks, murmured in surprise and astonishment as his eyes widened. The red-hot crayfish were covered by the beer that was poured in, and then covered with a lid. The fire was turned up to boil the beer before simmering it with a medium fire. When it was the right time to remove the lid, Mag turned up the fire to reduce the gravy, and the freshness of crayfish merged together with all the different tastes of the spices, becoming increasingly rich. The customers were already familiar with the spicy crayfish and the garlic crayfish that was released that afternoon. However, the 13-spice crayfish which was just introduced that night had become every customer's focus. The rich and complicated aroma and the layers that the aroma presented had shocked everyone. "Your crayfish." Jane came over with a tray and placed all 6 plates in front of Tony and Steve. Gulp. Tony couldn't help swallowing his saliva. Looking at the spicy crayfish that was coated with red oil, the garlic crayfish that was covered by minced garlic, and the 13-spice crayfish that had a unique aroma, he had trouble choosing which one of them to start from. Chapter 1349 Do I Still Want My Reputation? Tony looked at Steve, who was enjoying his food, and his gaze landed on the garlic crayfish in the center. The finely minced garlic became golden brown after it was fried, and the rich garlic's aroma washed all over them. Surprisingly, there wasn't the usual spicy taste of the garlic, and it was obviously milder when compared to the 13-spice and spicy flavor. "Oh, this is the first time I've seen garlic being used as a side dish for seafood. If this dish is served to the vampires, they would most probably show their true form straight away." Tony smiled as he twisted a pincer off the crayfish too. The pincer was knocked upon by the back of the knife, and there was a mild crack on it. He pressed harder, and the shell was split into 2. The supple meat was revealed. The crayfish meat was very supple, and the gravy had seeped into the pincer through the gaps. Hence, he could see that the heat control of this crayfish was very good, and it was removed from the wok at the correct time. However, there was a note of hesitation on his face when he looked at the white and tender crayfish meat and then the garlic in the plate. Tony didn't like garlic. This condiment favored by humans was not commonly seen on the Demon Islands. The fresh seafood didn't seem to go well along with the strong-smelling garlic, and it had a hateful agitating spicy scent. He had a live fish sashimi with a clove of garlic on an island last month. The taste of garlic lingered in his mouth for days, and the air behind him wasn't very fresh for the next few days. "If you eat the pincer without dipping into the minced garlic, this dish will have lost its soul," Steve reminded him as he put the crayfish's head down. Then, he twisted a pincer off, and pulled out its supple flesh before rolling it in the minced garlic. After coating the meat with a layer of golden glistening minced garlic, he bit off half of the pincer, and showed a satisfied expression. "I guess you are playing me, but I don't have the proof." Tony hesitated for a moment before rolling the pincer in the plate, and coating it with a layer of minced garlic. "I'll just take one bite at most. Even if the taste is very strong, it will be over soon after I tolerate it for a moment," Tony thought, and then he bit into the pincer that was coated with the minced garlic. The crayfish meat that was coated with the minced garlic released its taste on the tip of the tongue first. The texture was surprisingly mild, and the garlic's unique spiciness was missing. After stir-frying, the garlic became an exquisite taste that activated the taste buds instantly. And the supple crayfish meat complemented the delicious minced garlic beautifully, and it became even more scrumptious as he chewed on it. "Why does the garlic taste like this? This is completely different from the garlic I have eaten before. This taste is so beautiful. It is so gentle, like the caress of the sea, yet still very rich. It didn't steal the limelight and freshness of the crayfish meat, and instead made it taste even more scrumptious. This taste. How did he make the crayfish taste so divine? Compared to it, the king mantis shrimp could only be considered a little brother. This is the real ultimate king of the crayfish. Eat it. Forget about the king mantis shrimp." Tony's heart was full of shock. This mouthful of crayfish had completely subverted his understanding of prawns. He really couldn't imagine that there were really chefs who could make the prawns taste so unique and exquisite. Even someone like him, who had eaten his way through the Demon Islands and knew the seafood best in this world, was shocked. He dipped the other half of the crayfish meat in the minced garlic before eating it in one bite again. Tony felt the beautiful taste that was blossoming at the tip of his tongue, and revealed the same blissful smile that Steve was showing. Tony put down the empty pincers, and asked Mag, "Boss, did you recognize the garlic wrongly? The garlic that I had before had never tasted so nice." He was increasingly sure that the boss had made a big mistake when he was naming the dish. He continued, no one knows garlic better than I do. That is a kind of food that makes one want to cry after eating it. It's not a friendly ingredient. Are you talking about this? Mag was chopping garlic when Tony was talking about that. He swept all the minced garlic into the wok before tossing a small clove of garlic onto Tony's table, and said, "This is just normal garlic." Tony stared at the clove of garlic that was spinning in front of him. It was covered by a light purple skin, and the faint spicy taste had already begun to disperse through the skin. It was no different from the garlic that he had seen before. Meanwhile, the minced garlic in Mag's wok began to turn golden gradually, and the aroma slowly blossomed. It smelled exactly like the minced garlic in the garlic crayfish. Tony was stunned. Do I still want my reputation? I am the most famous food critic in the demon race. Steve, who was drinking beer from his mug, laughed and then coughed violently. He had never seen that expression on Tony's face before. Isn't that Master Tony? I have seen his portrait in the Perfect Food magazine before. Is he that food critic who says he knows the seafood the best? Seems like he didn't know things very well. He even recognized the spices wrongly. Maybe Boss Hades is simply too unique. Some customers had recognized Tony. The great food critic's reputation had spread far and wide. Usually at such a moment, Tony would maintain a low profile as he stood up to wave to everybody before signing autographs for one or two fans, and conducting a live review of the food in front of everyone's admiring gazes. He would then gain more fans in the process. But today, Tony kept making mistakes and people noticed them, so he was a little panicked. Protecting his professionalism and reputation became his most important task now. I think this is a very creative way of cooking. It made garlic delicious with the correct method. Tony smiled. Although he was swearing at Mag in his heart, the garlic crayfish was really very delicious, and he couldn't say words that were against his heart. It would have appeared very unprofessional. He who talks much errs much. Tony quickly resumed tasting the garlic crayfish after his remark. A cut was made on the crayfish's back from the head to the tail, but the meat wasn't damaged at all. He peeled the crayfish meat that was as thick as an arm out from the shell, and dipped it in the minced garlic. He took a big bite, and then his whole world became complete instantaneously. Chapter 1350. So satisfying. Seems like that wasn't a beautiful experience for you too. Steve shrugged. The Abyss demons had always been very proud. Although Tony was famous in the culinary circle, to those pig-riding Abyss demons, he wasn't a VIP whom they needed to treat with respect. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to spend 5 days there before he got to eat the roast pork trotters. I think I am already in love with Carapace Island. The slightly salty wind, beautiful and polite service staff, and that delicious garlic crayfish. It's simply an unbelievable fantastic experience. Tony amazed. His hunger was still unsated when he put down the bowl. Steve looked at the remaining spicy crayfish and 13-spice crayfish, and asked Mag, "Boss, is the spicy crayfish or the 13-spice crayfish heavier?" "Do you still need to ask that? There are so many spices in the 13-spice, it has to be heavier. Of course we should eat the spicy crayfish first." Tony chuckled, feeling a little exasperated with Steve's question. "My personal advice is to eat the 13-spice one first," Mag replied calmly. Tony was dumbstruck. "All right," Steve replied before grabbing the 13-spice crayfish. He said to Tony, "You better don't underestimate Boss Spicy Crayfish, or else you're going to regret it." "Ha! What's there to worry about? I am the demon who has tasted the roasted whole sheep with volcanic chili on Volcano Island. How could a mere crayfish cause trouble for me?" Tony said with a relaxed expression. He didn't take Steve's words to heart. However, after a moment of hesitation, he still chose to eat 13-spice crayfish first. Compared to the mild and singular aroma of the minced garlic, the 13-spice crayfish's aroma was more complex and layered. This aroma that was made up of many different spices was actually all mixed into one prawn. A chef usually hated messiness when he or she cooked. Not only would that destroy the food's own taste, it would also cause the food to taste weird because of the clash of the scents. On the Demon Islands, there were only 3-4 spices that the chefs commonly used. It was mostly to remove the fishy smell and to do some simple seasoning so that the seafood that was freshly caught from the sea and the wild game produced on the islands could show off their own fresh taste to their greatest extent. However, Mag had added 13 and more spices and condiments into a crayfish like this, which was unbelievable. Tony took a whiff of that scent and furrowed his brows slightly. Other than sea salt, he couldn't identify any of the other spices. As he was a food critic who prized himself for having an exceptional sense of smell, this made him feel rather defeated. However, the many spices didn't make the aroma feel messy and difficult to accept. If he took it in fully, he would instead be attracted gradually by the amazing layered sensation. It's very difficult to identify if the chef has mixed this taste randomly or constructed this taste deliberately. Moreover, whether the chef could replicate the same taste every time is a test of his abilities. Tony pondered, and then reached out to twist the head off. He removed the shell, and revealed the crayfish butter underneath before sucking it out. The overflowing crayfish butter was already soaked in the gravy. The fresh crayfish butter collided with the complex aroma, which made the taste buds slightly unaccustomed initially. The taste buds had no idea which taste to transmit to the brain first. Immediately, the condiments and spices seemed to have reached some consensus, and all kinds of flavor began to enter the stage and show off their distinctive marvelous tastes. Numb, spicy, fresh, fragrant, sweet, tender. There was a battle which surprised him taking place in his mouth right now. Without any doubts, Tony was completely defeated. At that moment, he finally agreed with the boss words. There were definitely more than 13 spices added. Moreover, this full and complex taste and the surprising layered sensation had all displayed the chef's amazing memory toward the use of spices. He could still feel the aftertaste in his mouth after he swallowed. He ate one mouthful after another as he simply couldn't stop. Tony had completely surrendered to this intoxicating 13 spice. This 13 spice crayfish is on par with the garlic crayfish. No other dishes could beat them on Demon Islands. Tony gave a thumbs up, and then continued peeling the shell and eating the meat that was soaked with the 13 spice gravy. There was an exquisite aftertaste in his mouth after he finished it. After eating the 13 spice crayfish, Tony's gaze landed on the last spicy crayfish. The garlic crayfish and 13 spice crayfish had already given him plenty of surprises. The mild-tasting garlic crayfish and the complex-tasting 13 spice crayfish had already fulfilled all the imagination he had about prawns. And what was so special about this spicy crayfish? In fact, he already wasn't expecting much. After all, it was already not easy for a chef to have one amazing signature dish. A chef who tried to do everything well usually failed at everything he tried. The spicy crayfish is indeed my favorite. Steve was already enjoying the spicy crayfish as he huffed and puffed. He found a moment to gulp down a mouthful of ice-cold beer before releasing a long breath of relief. The satisfaction on his face made people who were watching him curl their lips. Does he have to be so exaggerating? Tony was rather doubtful, so he reached out to grab the crayfish. He peeled open the back, took out a piece of meat, and dipped it in the red gravy before taking a big bite. The numbness and spiciness blossomed on the tip of the tongue. That was an even more explosive taste than with the 13 spice crayfish. It activated the slightly tired taste buds and elevated them. They began to welcome that spiciness crazily. Tony's face flushed red instantly. Not many demon tribes on the Demon Islands like spicy foods, so he wasn't good at eating them. However, as a professional food critic, normal spiciness wouldn't give him a big reaction. But this numb and spicy feeling made him feel as if his butt was suddenly pierced by a needle, and it gave him a shiver. The numbness on the tongue didn't continue for too long. After chewing the meat that had absorbed the spicy gravy, the freshness and fragrant spiciness began to enter the stage, and brought along an unparalleled marvelous experience. SHH. Woo. SHH. Woo. Tony started to pant after swallowing a mouthful of crayfish meat. Apart from the scrumptiousness, the numb spiciness was his greatest sensation. Beads of sweat were already appearing on his forehead. This was an intense taste that he had never experienced before. It was much more intense than the bloody roast pork trotters that he had yesterday. It is simply the best to have a mouthful of ice-cold beer at this time. Steve raised up his mug as a gesture before tilting his head back to drink a big mouthful. Oh, yes. Beer. Tony's eyes lit up as he, too, picked up the mug on his table. The black stone mug felt cold in his hands, which gave him a refreshing sensation. He eagerly drank a big mouthful of it. SHHH. A sound appeared automatically in his brain. So satisfying. Tony praised it.